Disputes Tribunal in political parties and Disputes Tribunal number PPDTC E003/2023 Fatuma Ndanduro and Jubilee Party of Kenya versus Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party, in which the Speaker of the Senate is joined as a third interested party. The Tribunal issued, among its others, the following order. And first, and I quote, that pending inter-parties hearing and termination of the application, interim orders of injunction are hereby issued, restraining the respondent and interested parties, either by themselves, their servants, agents, and or any other persons acting on their behest from implementing the communication and resolution by the respondents' parliamentary group meeting held on 14th February 2023, purporting to remove the first applicant and other members of Jubilee Party from the position of Senate, Minority Whip, and parliamentary committees, and its attendant privileges, respectively. The matter is scheduled for mention before the Tribunal on 20th February 2023 at 2:30 p.m. to confirm compliance and for further directions. Honorable Senators, as you are aware, Article 3(1) of the Constitution places an obligation on every person to respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution. Additionally, Article 10 of the Constitution includes as one of the national values and principles of governance the rule of law. Article 115(1), 159(1) of the Constitution further provides that judicial authority is derived from the people and vests in and shall be exercised by the courts and tribunals established by or under the Constitution. Honorable Senators, respect of the rule of law and judicial authority are fundamental tenets of our democratic system of governance, which we hold without exception obligated to uphold. Accordingly, in the circumstances, I hereby defer the delivery of the communication on this matter pending the outcome of the proceedings that are before the political parties' disputes tribunal or the vacation of the orders in political parties' disputes tribunal number PPDTC/E003/2023 Fatuma Ndanduro and Jubilee Party of Kenya versus Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party. I thank you. Minority Leader, Mazayo Stewart.
Mr. Speaker, we asked for the communication with regards to the minority side on the leadership changes. I'm glad you have read what you have read. But first and foremost, that tribunal order has not been served upon myself. It has not been served upon my brother Olekina, and it has not been served on any side of the minority. That is point number one. Number two, Mr. Speaker, you may ignore the standing orders, but you cannot ignore precedents. And I want to lay down the precedents in a very formal way. There was Murkomen, who is now the Minister of Roads, using the same provision. He was removed, and in his place, Samuel Pugisio was to take over the leadership. And it was being done by the majority side. You can see that even Kihika Kimani, who was a whip, and Kihika Kimani was the first whip that we had. But, Mr. Speaker, Kihika Kimani, under the same provision,
Honorable Senators,
under the same provision,
the minority will be handling
under the same
absolute
provision,
silence.
Kihika Kimani And Kihika Kimani was, Susan Kihika Kimani was removed from being a whip. And in her place, Kangata took over. The same provision was used to remove Kangata, and we put Wamatangi. And that was being done by the majority side. None of us commented on this side because that was a party issue. Mr. Speaker, we find it strange that the same House, together with all these precedents that were used, have not been used now. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I have not seen the order myself, but I can tell you one thing. I want to address you on this issue. That the dispute here is between Senator Fatuma Dulo and her party. It is not between Fatuma Dulo and the House. That is point number one, and I want you to hear me properly. Mr. Speaker, while I agree that the PPDP is the right avenue to go, but the PPDP has absolutely no power to serve and stop the proceedings or to stop the procedures of Parliament. That jurisdiction to serve Parliament, I have not seen it. This is the first time that we are accepting this kind of an order in this House. What we want as the minority is that the communication that we gave you last week, which you've stayed with that communication for much too long. I've never seen communications coming to the House and staying that long. But this particular one has stayed for so long. You are now denying the minority an opportunity to have their leaders. Finally, looking at that order itself, it has all the parties as she wanted to have them, but it has not included the deputy whip. So if you are to say that that order is correct, then the position of the deputy whip is not mentioned anywhere in that order. Go ahead and communicate. That order of the deputy minority whip is not covered. Mr. Speaker, we know there are three arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. These are arms of the government. And there's what you call separation of powers. Mr. Speaker, they speak about the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. PPDP doesn't fall anywhere close to the government. It's a tribunal, and it cannot issue an order against Parliament. Mr. Speaker, your hands are tied. As it stands right now, Mr. Speaker, your hands are tied. We go by precedents in the Senate and in Parliament. Your brother, former, who is now the Attorney General, Muturi, clearly stated when he was served with an order. And that order was coming from the judiciary, not a tribunal. And he said he will not implement that one, even though it was coming from the judiciary. And he said, Parliament have what you call, the government has what you call separation of powers. That is one of the, and finally, that is one of the issues. And finally, Mr. Speaker, you have not made your communication. You have gone ahead to communicate something else. You have gone ahead to pronounce yourself on the court order and not the communication that came to you before. Our communication came to you before. And there's this point of a delaying, I don't know what I can call it, but you have delayed that communication. You have allowed now to read to the House something that has come from PDP. So which communication should you have communicated first? Should you have communicated the communication that came from the minority side, or should you go ahead and now communicate on something that does not even affect you as a senator, as a Speaker of the Senate? That is one of the issues I want, and I want you now to address the issue of the Deputy Whip, Edwin Sifuna, who is not party to this, all this. Confirm him as my deputy so that this side does not stay without leadership. Thank you.
I'm following a list here, kindly. You have already praised your account, so just have your cool wait. I give you that opportunity. Majority Leader, Senator Chirio Talun.
Mr. Speaker, we have gone full circle. This is a very interesting debate. And if I was to be honest, and I want to be as candid as I can be, I'm a bit confused on this topic. I have defended both sides of this debate. I have been on the side of Parliament cannot be injuncted. And I used to shout so loudly, seated where Senator Kinyua is, for many years. Because that's a vogue word. That's the thing that I heard when I first came to this house. Being said, I think it must have been one of the impeachments. I think Deputy Governor Kiala or something. And we said Parliament cannot be injuncted. So we enjoyed for many times, every time there were court orders that were brought before the speakers, and we took a very firm position. Until one bright, sunny morning, when President Uhuru decided to remove our colleagues, Senator Susan Kihika and Senator Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen. We rushed to court, secured the orders, brought them before the Speaker. Then we were quickly reminded, Parliament cannot be injuncted. So here we are, a practice that we had established so strongly, that we used to be defenders of, despite having a valid court order presented to Speaker Lusaka. In minutes, he received a phone call. I've never seen my good friend, the Speaker, shake as he did on that morning. Quickly dashed to the House and communicated the changes. That gave me a different view to this conversation about the House cannot. Why don't you keep your calm, my good friend, so that we don't
Senators,
drag.
I will request you to restrain close
Yeah.
purposes.
In fact, I intend to be very brief, Mr. Speaker.
And I'm happy actually today I want us to debate like honorable senators.
Yeah.
Hammer your points properly and sit down.
Thank
Another
you, sir.
senator will
That's
come
what I
there
intend to do.
and take over.
I'm sure he will have his opportunity to say his what he thinks about this particular topic. If you can restrain Senator Sifuna, Mr. Speaker, because you know he stands straight next to
Majority
me.
Leader, proceed and conclude.
Yeah. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, so today we are here there's a court order, but there's something different because I've taken time to look at the court order. Unlike in all the previous court orders that were being addressed to the Senate, this one specifically mentions you as a speaker. And that leaves me in a very interesting place. It's not in my place to advise you. It is you to make your decision because you're the speaker. But I'm not sure whether you want to proceed and defy a court order that is directly mentioning you as a speaker and not the institution of the Senate as has been previously. Because the order that you were carrying then was to the Senate, but not directly to the speaker. And that's the leeway. That's the leeway that speaker then used and said, in any case, it's not me as in person that have been mentioned. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because I know my colleagues want us to debate this matter and are saying, please don't involve yourselves. But I agree with the leader of minority that there is precedence. Hardly 2 months ago, Mr. Speaker, National Assembly was vetting permanent secretaries, or they call principal secretaries nowadays. LSK moved to court on certain issues that they found to be wanting. What did your good brother in the National Assembly do? He lived up to the spirit of the Constitution, as was his interpretation, and waited. I think the National Assembly was injected for about a whole 1 month. In fact, the government stayed for close to 2 months without principal secretaries because of a court order. The process was still ongoing. But the Speaker said, because 1, I am a law-respecting Kenyan. 2, I swore by the Constitution. 3, as somebody who campaigned and actively promised Kenyans, because there is a history to this. We've come from a part of a history in our country during very difficult times when court orders were being ignored. And it was one of our campaign promise, at least for those of us on this side, that we shall always respect court orders. So, Mr. Speaker, you're being invited to make or to tread on very dangerous ground, which is defy a court order that's directly addressed to you. I leave it to your wisdom, Mr. Speaker. But at least on this particular matter, I want to urge you to take precedence from what your senior brother, the Speaker of the National Assembly, did when he was presented with a court order against the vetting of principal secretaries. He waited until that decision was vacated by the courts and the exercise was concluded. In any case, I have seen, Mr. Speaker, that that order is only for, I think, 3 or 4 days only. How long is that? Before many of the points that my good friend, the leader of minority, is arguing here, some of them can be made before that court because they have that opportunity to go and tell the court all those very nice things that he's saying. Because indeed, he is right and I agree with him. You are not a party to this dispute. This is a divorce proceeding in the Azimio coalition. You are neither one of the dowry negotiators who featured during the time that they were getting together, neither should you feature in their divorce. But unfortunately, your hands are tied, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, make your decision, but be wise on how you go about it, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mogeni, Eric Okongo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, Mr. Speaker, I was trying to raise on a point of order.
The Honorable Senator, also the majority leader, was on a point of order. All these are prosecuting point of orders.
Yeah, because, Mr. Speaker, the point I wanted to raise is that as a House, we are making reference to a court order, which on this side we have not had sight of. But it seems the majority side have a court order. They even know how it's worded. But I wanted to request, Mr. Speaker, that you know, so that there is a fairness in the debate of this matter. If the court order was applied to the majority side, fairness demands, Mr. Speaker, that we should also we have been given a copy. Senator Kalwale, the issue I'm raising, it touches on both sides. We need to see a court order because, let me tell you, you know, we have all lived in this country. There are some grounds which are so dangerous to take this country to. For example, Speaker, you know, you may be thinking that that ruling you are reading today is toward the minority side. But me, I'm looking at the big picture. We have sat here, Mr. Speaker, as senators, performing a critical duty of impeaching governors. And we have been served with court orders, Senator Kalwale, before. And speakers who have sat on your seat have ruled consistently, Mr. Speaker, that if we open it up, and you record this day, if you open it up to Kenyans to start serving your office with court order, which you receive and you come and make communication, Mr. Speaker, that is the day we will start killing this house. That is the day we will start killing this house. Mr. Speaker, your office does not serve the interest of just one day. Your office should serve posterity. Posterity. Mr. Speaker, if you read our standing orders, and I'm saying this with a very heavy heart, because we are elected leaders from 47 counties with special interest senators here, Mr. Speaker. The moment we say is a very, changing leadership is a very small matter. Huh? As I speak here, Mr. Speaker, I came here to debate a serious issue that transpired yesterday before SIPAC, where Kenya Revenue Authority is levying distress on my county of Nyamira for non-payment of pay for salaries for the month of December, January. Yet my county has never received disbursements. And here we are talking about useless court orders from a tribunal. Are we serious as senators, Mr. Speaker? Some of these things, Mr. Speaker, things have happened. We have sat here, Mr. Speaker. One time, Mr. Speaker, this side removed Senator Wetangula. It took a day. It took a day, Mr. Speaker. And there was no so much ulabalu. If you go to the answer, when the governor for Wajir was being impeached, we were served with a court order, not from a tribunal, from the High Court of the Republic of Kenya. And because we respect the sovereignty of this house, we rejected that order. Where do you want to take us to now? If we start setting precedent that we'll be receiving orders from a tribunal, and you communicate from your chair, Mr. Speaker, I tell you, not even a county assembly can do what we're doing. Let us be serious, Mr. Speaker. Huh? If you look at the freedom of parliament, if you go down history lane, you know it, senators. There are days you could never stop Honorable Shikuku in single party era from speaking on the floor because of the respect of the House, Mr. Speaker. I have not seen this court order, but I'm a very sad Kenyan, extremely saddened, Mr. Speaker, that we can be injected, the Senate of the Republic of Kenya can be injected by a tribunal, and we receive an order, and you make a communication. Mr. Speaker, what are we doing to this country? What are we doing? Mr. Speaker, if you read Standing Order 103, and I'm happy that I'm in this house with my colleague, Senior Counsel, Professor Ugenda. If you read Standing Order number 103, even when there are proceedings that can be deemed to be sub judice before this, there is a way you bring those proceedings before the House. Now you are talking about proceedings which have not been tabled before this House, and we are debating a matter we don't know. Me, I've never known, I've not seen these proceedings. I don't know who has filed them, against who, but here we are debating. Mr. Speaker, you should have procedurally asked the person who is affected by those orders, in line with Standing Order number 103, to bring that, the proceedings, the pleadings, table them before the House, Mr. Speaker, and then we debate to determine whether what we are about to debate is sub judice, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say I respect courts, Mr. Speaker. I've been a lawyer for Senator Cheragay here when he was being shunned by everybody from the majority side. I was the only one representing him in court at 4 o'clock. I went defending Senator here, Lelegwe. I'm a respected man in his county, Mr. Speaker. So when I'm standing here, Mr. Speaker, I'm standing here in defense of this House and in defense of rule of law. And I will say the same even if it was happening on the other side, because I know the critical role that this House plays. If tomorrow the governor for Nyamira is summoned and he comes and serves us with an injunction, then what will be my work as Senator for Nyamira? Mr. Speaker, I plead with you, Mr. Speaker, to reconsider what you are about to do. Please, for the sake of this country and for the sake of this House. And Senator Cheruiyot, please, I'm pleading with you. Don't look at these small fights here. Look at this House. Look at the interest of this House, please. Let us not kill this House. Please. Please. And I've said we have precedents. Senator Kangata was a majority whip. You said you passed resolutions. The Speaker, who was not even a lawyer, I'm happy the Speaker, the substantive Speaker is a lawyer. Members of Law Society of Kenya are looking at him. I was once serving as chair of Law Society of Kenya when the late Chief Justice of this Republic, Gisheru, saw the late President Kibaki at night. And we told him, these things will come back to haunt you. When Kenyans enacted the new constitution 2010, read it. A proviso was put in that constitution, barring that Chief Justice not to serve under the new constitution. So you must protect your office. You must protect the reputation of the office of the Speaker for posterity. So, Mr. Speaker, please, if there is any court order, if there are any pleadings, bring them to the House, table them here, we debate and make a decision. We are a senior house, the upper house. Senators, I rest my case.
Thank you. Senator Mboni Karwale.
Mr. Speaker, my system never works, but my seat never moves. Thank you for this chance. And Mr. Speaker, I rise to agree with the leader of the minority. I rise to agree with the remarks by Senator Omugeni. And I am reflecting on the remarks by the leader of the majority. Honorable Senators, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be extremely careful. The doctrine of separation of powers in India has been followed by the Separations of Powers Act of India. And because this area is not very clear, we've left the country to where we are now. You were not elected to come here and be wasting taxpayers' money discussing little things as to who sits on which committee and representing which side of the House. We were elected to come here to do oversight, Mr. Speaker, discuss the budget, Mr. Speaker, represent our people. I want to appeal to the Chief Administrator of Justice in this country, Justice Mother Kaume, to make sure that these kind of things are discharged expeditiously. You are not to blame. You have court orders against you. And what kind of speaker would you be, Mr. Speaker, to be the one who is known to be defying courts? You can't. So if the court, and Omugeni, you know, a tribunal, when they speak, they have the power of a court. If he defies the tribunal, he has no respect for the lower court, for the high court, court of appeal, even the Supreme Court. So let us be angry, but allow the Speaker to do what he's doing. He's been served. That's it. You observe the rule of law, and if, Honorable Leader of the Minority, your attention, if you must quote precedents in this House, do us a favor. You have quoted the President of Murkomen, Senator Susan Kihiga, and Kangata, if you must quote, don't quote precedents that were occasioned to this country by the infamous government of the handshake. The president you can quote in this House, leader of the minority, is the president that took place in the lower house, where the same courts, the way they have done, they stopped the voting or the vetting of principal secretaries. And the president stopped, the speaker stopped, a ruling was made, and the matter was unlocked. So we want to invite our speaker to use the president by Senator Wetangula, who is the current Speaker of the National Assembly, allow this matter to go the due process, and then come to us and rule and lead us. We are with you. You are with us. You are for us. We are for you, for the country. Don't come here and play games. Let this thing end quickly through the due process being respected, instead of coming here, taking us around, walking out of the house and coming to Kakamega and singing to women over the weekend. Mr. Speaker, let us finish it here. You, Mr. Speaker, don't be intimidated by me. Don't be intimidated by the leader of the minority. Walk the narrow path, rule of law. There is a code. I urge you not to listen to the standing order from the leader of the minority.
Senator Sifuna Edwin. If honorable senators, if you have placed your hand in intervention, actually even I'm picking even from the requests, kindly hold on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, last week I was getting hot and bothered about this matter. But now that I know exactly what's going on, I'm just laughing, Mr. Speaker. I've discovered that they are just basic political games. I would use the word cheap, but people will jump out of their seats. Mr. Speaker, last week somebody told me that, you know, when I was elected, I came to this house thinking I'm coming to legislate, to oversight, and to do what? And to represent my people of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. Somebody added another thing here last week, that I have also come here as a student to learn. So I will also take this opportunity to teach what it is that I know, and that is the law, Mr. Speaker. First, I am very happy.
Honorable Senator Nairobi, you remember I reminded you in the morning that the senator for my kids. So teach them also how to represent.
Yes, I am hoping, Mr. Speaker, that your children are watching, because I will be saying a few things, and I hope that I can inspire them to be future senators of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'm very happy that we have come to this juncture. I was imploring you last week that you need to get this matter out of your office so that we can pursue the dispute between us and one of our members in the proper forum. I want to agree with Senator Dulo and the action that she has taken, that in fact the proper forum for resolution of disputes between political parties and their members, or political parties and political parties within a coalition, is a political parties disputes tribunal. We have been vindicated as a minority because we were telling the House last week that in fact the Speaker has no role whatsoever in the dispute amongst the minority party. That in fact what the standing orders require you to do, Mr. Speaker, is upon receipt of this decision that has been made by the minority party, all you need to do is to make a communication to the House so that everybody else is aware. Number two, Mr. Speaker, there is something called jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is everything, as I say in law. Every single court and tribunal in this republic has to derive jurisdiction from a specific provision, either of the Constitution or of an act of parliament. If the law does not give you jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker, you cannot assume that jurisdiction by yourself. Jurisdiction of the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal under Section 40 of the Political Parties Act is limited to the matters that I have alluded to, disputes among the members of a party and the party, or political party against political party. That jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker, does not extend to a jurisdiction over disputes over this House. The Political Parties Dispute Tribunal has no jurisdiction over the Senate, Mr. Speaker. And if you want to know that the people who went to court in this particular matter, who went to the tribunal, are aware of that fact, the Speaker of the House is actually not a respondent in that matter. They are named as an interested party, Mr. Speaker. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I, because of my nature as a fortuitous person, have obtained a copy of that court order. And a plain reading of the order has limited the matters before that tribunal to the question of the seat of the whip of the minority side. The question of the seat of the deputy whip is not a matter before the tribunal, and it is not covered by that court order that you read to us, or that you refer to, Mr. Speaker. The question then would be whether we can debate the legality of the order, whether the tribunal can injunct Parliament. The court order has expressed itself to a specific matter. What difficulty did your office have in communicating matters not affected by that court order? So that we in the minority, and knowing how our court system works and how long justice takes in this country, are being told that until these matters are resolved at whatever stage, because it will come from the PPDT, we know she will go to the High Court as is her right. She can even go to the Court of Appeal, and these matters take time. What we are being told is, as the minority side, we will stay without a whip until that matter is resolved. It cannot be true, Mr. Speaker. So in my submissions, Mr. Speaker, I will be asking that you separate matters that are covered by these proceedings and the court order that is before you or served upon you. And if there are matters that are not covered by that dispute, you make the pronouncement on the leadership in the deputy minority whip seat. Mr. Speaker, lastly, I have been told, or we've heard you being told that, in fact, you should be very afraid that if you were to defy a court order, that you would come to you, or consequences, some undisclosed consequences will befall you. Mr. Speaker, as a lawyer who wasted no time in class, I did not sleep. I can assure you that the office is distinct from you. The office of the Speaker is an office with perpetuity. It does not say on this order that the Senator of Meru, Karuthi Murungi, if you disobey this court order, you're going to jail. There's nothing like that. And I can assure you, because we have a battery of lawyers here, if there is any consequence that will come by virtue of you standing up for the dignity of this House, free legal services will ensue from the minority side, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to make the point further that, in fact, this House, every single time we argue with our colleagues from the National Assembly on who's the upper house, who's the lower house, but every single opportunity we ourselves get as senators, we impeach our own argument by making ourselves subservient to the National Assembly. If precedent is set in this House, in the Senate, Mr. Speaker, why are we being referred to precedent in the National Assembly? The Senate is not a student of the National Assembly. We don't need to learn anything from them. We are okay as a House. We are equipped with all the knowledge that we need. Our precedent is the president of the Senate. We don't need to be referred to any other House. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues here who are insisting that, in fact, we should be discussing serious issues. Mr. Speaker, every day I open my newspaper, my heart breaks. Yesterday or the other day, we were being told we have 4,000 doctors in this country who are unemployed. Mr. Speaker, just the other day, we were being told that even these doctors who this government has been unable to find work for are being imprisoned here by the Ministry of Health, saying that they cannot go to seek opportunities outside the country. What sort of relationship are we with our nation? That, in fact, the country refuses to provide opportunity for you, then refuses you opportunity to look for jobs elsewhere. Those are the matters that I was elected to discuss here. I want to conclude, Mr. Speaker, by saying we in the minority side have no problem persecuting this matter or prosecuting this matter before the PPDT. It is something over which we have experts. Senator Osotsi basically wrote the book on how to deal with political parties at the PPDT. We are very well equipped on our side. We have no issues whatsoever. In fact, we have been taken, it's like now trying to drown a fish. You have now put us in water, because in the PPDT, that is where we thrive, Mr. Speaker. You cannot drown a fish in a pond. That is where we live. I am happy that the matter is before the PPDT. But before we conclude that case, Mr. Speaker, please do not allow this House, which in our own constitution has the powers of a high court. We are, in terms of the judiciary, you are at the same level as a high court. How can a magistrate's court issue an order directing the high court on what to do? Mr. Speaker, these are the questions to ponder. For that reason, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, please, please, let us not destroy this House. Give this House the dignity that has been given by those who came before us. Ensure that we are respected by all organs of government, and please do what the right thing is. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You cannot impose leadership on the minority side. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am happy. Our debate today is very sober. And I think this is really good, Mr. Speaker, because we are being watched by our Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, I listened to your communication very carefully. And it gave me the impression that you are ready today to issue a communication on the issue before the House. But you were stopped by the court order. Mr. Speaker, listening to the submissions by colleagues here, I would like to refer this House to Article 2 of the Constitution. This Constitution is a supreme law of the Republic and binds all persons and all state organs at both levels of government. Mr. Speaker, Parliament, in my submissions, is a state organ, one of the state organs, and therefore it is bound by this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to refer members again to Article 159 of the Constitution on judicial authority. The judicial authority is derived from the people invested and shall be exercised by the courts. An emphasis, Mr. Speaker, the courts and tribunals established by or under the Constitution. Sub-Article 2 of the same article says, in exercising judicial authority, the courts and the tribunal shall be guided by the following principles. Justice shall be done to all irrespective of status. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to submit that the framers of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, and by that time I was serving as the Deputy Minister of Justice by this 2010. It was to give authority, Mr. Speaker, to the High Court and give similar powers also to the tribunals, Mr. Speaker. Political parties tribunal, therefore, Mr. Speaker, is an organ that has the power to issue orders, which under Article 2 of the Constitution should bind this House. Those are my humble submissions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the members from the other side are saying that this ought not to have happened. But, Mr. Speaker, the decision they have made as a coalition is affecting political rights of a member. of this House. And that is why that member has gone to court, Mr. Speaker, to secure that right, and especially if that right is infringed in a manner that if she feels is unconstitutional. So, Mr. Speaker, I think there is the balance between what we want to achieve as political parties and also political rights of an individual, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that you are within the constitutional principle. Mr. Speaker, members have spoken about what happened in the lower house when the PSS, Mr. Speaker, could not be vetted. I want to add another situation again which arose, Mr. Speaker. Until last week, the chief administrative secretary, Mr. Speaker, that process was also stopped. There's another second chance I can talk about this. And Mr. Speaker, that was, of course, against the executive. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this constitution cannot be applied selectively. It should be applied fairly, constitutionally, if it's protecting the interests of a member. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree, I was listening to Senior Counsel Mogeni when he was making his submissions. And he was able to plead with you that don't demean the status of the House. I think, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing more and worse than for the Speaker of this House to disobey court orders from an institution that has the power to issue a court order that can stop us. Mr. Speaker, I think it is important that we allow this process to proceed so that, Mr. Speaker, once they go back to the tribunal, do their matters, as Kalwale said, we have only about 2 or 3 days, Mr. Speaker, and we'll be back. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to be in this House and to be part and parcel of a House that is obeying court orders, fulfilling the spirit of Article 2 of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, nobody from the other side or this side should never and ever make you feel that you did the wrong thing today in stopping issuing the communication that you are actually prepared to do. And Mr. Speaker, in any event, Standing Order 23, which you have been arguing about it the other day, does not give a specific time frame within which you are supposed to communicate the decision after receiving a letter from the other side. So again, from the Standing Order's position, you are within the law. Again, from the perspective of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, you are within the law. Mr. Speaker, I submit that your communication should be respected by all of us and by this House.
Thank you. Senator Olekina Ledamo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want us to be very sober today and try to prosecute this matter in a process that will be able to set a precedent and also being futuristic. Mr. Speaker, I want to pick it up from where my colleague, the senator from Baringo, has left. And I want to borrow from what is commonly referred to as the doctrine of pleasure. The doctrine of pleasure is derived from the English common law, where it states that civil servants serve under the pleasure of the crown. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the definition of a whip enforces the party's policies. A whip is not there under their own volition for them to be able to determine how party policy should be adhered to. Mr. Speaker, when a whip does not rally fellow legislators to be able to vote on matters according to the party policy, that whip may lose that whip. In fact, in other jurisdictions, They are even expelled from political parties. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is what informed the drafters of our standing orders. When they drafted standing order number 23, Mr. Speaker, and I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that your hands are completely tied because a speaker is not a prefect of political parties. Mr. Speaker, the standing order is very clear. It's written in simple English. It says, upon a decision being made by the majority party or coalition under the standing order, the decision of the party or coalition shall be communicated to the speaker in writing, together with the minutes of the meetings at which the decision was made. Hypothetically, Mr. Speaker, if this Senate is to welcome or entertain injunctions by a tribunal, which tribunal does not set the agenda or the policy of a political party, what exactly are we saying? Are we saying that tribunals are going to define what the Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Coalition policy and procedures and constitution shall be? Then what form of government or country are we going to be living in? Mr. Speaker, I want to refer back to the doctrine of pleasure. As a whip, I serve under the pleasure of my party. This cannot be applied with the same logic as to the doctrine of pleasure when it comes to now civil servants in this country post the 2010 coalition. In fact, Mr. Speaker, what I want to say is that any moment leadership is changed, just so that you know you serve under the pleasure of your political party. When the leadership is changed, you lose everything. You lose your staff go home, you lose all the privileges because you've gone against your party policies. Mr. Speaker, loyalty to parties is not something which I should be lecturing this House on, because this House already has precedents. Anytime a member disobeys the party, they're removed. I think, Mr. Speaker, what we should be doing is we should be debating on very important issues. Today, Kenyans were rioting, were demonstrating outside because of how difficult it is now to live in this country. Eric Omondi was tear-gassed outside here. Kenyans are demonstrating everywhere, saying it is becoming unbearable to live in this country. We are paid by taxpayers. I don't want to wade into the debate of who is a shareholder of this country and who is not. But the truth of the matter is, there are very important things that are now being set in abeyance until we can be able to resolve this matter of leadership. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to beseech you not to allow party politics to determine the agenda of this House. Because I can assure you that until the party is respected, and when I say, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you, I speak with authority, I speak out of experience, because this thing has happened to me. Senator Ledam Olekina standing here. Mr. Speaker, in the last parliament, I was elected by my colleagues as the chair of PAC. But my party decided that I was not the right person to serve as chair of PAC. That is when I started researching on the doctrine of pleasure. I went to court, I got orders, but Parliament made it difficult even for me because Parliament did not want to come in anywhere. And when I say Parliament, I mean the Secretariat in Parliament. I was trying to convene meetings. I could not be able to convene a meeting because my party said I was not going to serve as the chair of that committee. Mr. Speaker, when I saw that is happening, I said, hey, can you take the dictionary and define loyalty? When I did, I went back and I pleaded with my party leader to forgive me for having crossed the line. So, Mr. Speaker, when I stand here and I speak with authority on that subject. Please, you should not be invited to prefects political parties. Mr. Speaker, when we go to our PG, the things that we discuss in that PG do not touch on anything to do with the Senate. Laws. The first thing, which is always precedent, is how are we together as brothers? Do we still believe? Do we still subscribe to the same school of thoughts? So, Mr. Speaker, to end, I want to remind you that a whip is an enforcer of a political party, policies, and procedures. A whip loses the whip when they disobey or they act against the political party that that person is serving under the pleasure of that political party. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I've heard my good brother, Senator Cheptumo, alluding to natural justice, talking about, I think I dropped it down here, talking about the right of that politician. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit to my brother that, through the chair, that when it comes to political parties, you have no right. The right is defined by your constitution, which you signed. It is not even the Kenyan constitution. It is the constitution of that political party. Loyalty to the party. And I can tell you, you will learn. If you don't know that, loyalty to the party is the #1 principle when it comes to the doctrine of pleasure. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to beseech you so that we can now discuss matters which are important to this nation. Please follow the standing orders. Standing order number 23, your hands are completely tied. And I'm sure the Secretariat can advise as much. Your hands are tied, issue the communication, leave matters of political parties to be dealt by politicians outside this House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I want to give another round of few, maybe 2 from each side, and this time observe 3 minutes. We're almost to the second hour. So I want to, now we give Senator Chalgei Samson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been listening keenly. As a House, it looks like we are going to full circle, because some of us in the previous session, we were subjected to similar issues. But I want to maybe make a few points, Mr. Speaker. One is that the wording of Article 3 of the Constitution says defense of the Constitution. You have an obligation as the House of the Speaker and as a person to defend the Constitution. And every matter that comes to the House, Mr. Speaker, is considered case by case. In as much as when you look at Standing Order number 1 on looking at the precedents and traditions of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, you must considering that Article 10 on principles of good governance and national values, the rule of law, forms a biggest basis of the value, Mr. Speaker. The minority side today is trying to lecture us about disobeying the rule of law that has been accusing the majority side and the government of disobeying the law. Mr. Speaker, I remember when our brothers were de-whipped and removed. Me, personally, Mr. Speaker, I was removed in a press conference. So mine was worse, but others, at least the communications came to the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Speaker then, Lusaka, just issued, and I'm surprised that my senior and my brother, Senator Stewart Marzayo, there was no ruling that came from that chair. The Speaker, Lusaka, just noted the changes. He didn't even give a ruling. I remember the former Senator of Elgeyo Marakwet and the current CS even requested for the ruling up to the last time we were leaving the House before going to general elections, Mr. Speaker. This habit of disobeying court orders was a symptom and behavior of the handshake government, where the minority side was thriving because they didn't obey any court order. And this government or any other arm of government, Mr. Speaker, should not disobey a court order, Mr. Speaker, in as much as we appreciate the distinction of separation of powers, Mr. Speaker. When you look under the Article 159, Article 169, the tribunal, and I have tremendous respect for my learned seniors, Senator Sifuna, Senator Okongo Mugeni. But intellectual dishonest should not take us to make comments that are convenient to do so because of political expedience, Mr. Speaker. When you look under Section 40 and 41, when this thing goes to PPDP, and Senator Sifuna say that is their field where they thrive, the 3 months are provided on how these disputes can be done. But, Mr. Speaker, we are not saying you should perfect political parties or manage affairs of political parties, but you have an obligation to protect the law. If this divorce of Azimio and Kenya lands is going to be messy with a lot of casualties, whichever direction they want to take, Mr. Speaker, we are not saying you should be part of it, but we are saying protect the law and follow the law for the benefit of all of us, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I agree with you and support your decision that let the minority side be patient. Patient does not hurt anybody, Mr. Speaker. And when those changes will come, you will communicate as per the law, so that we are not running this House, Mr. Speaker, the way all of us want to do, Mr. Speaker. And as a Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chege. Senator Kajwang Moses. You have 3 minutes carefully.
Mr. Speaker, this is not a legal matter. This is a political matter clothed as a legal matter. And we are behaving not unlike many county assemblies, which in the last 10 years has built a strong precedent in removal of speakers, deputy speakers, and leaders of the houses. Mr. Speaker, I've seen this. Homa Bay County Assembly, in the last term, changed speakers 4 times, leaders of majority and minority almost 5 times. And every time, they hid under legal terms like that which was born in your communication, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 23, if you read it carefully, and I've read it up to the end, we are engaged in what Shakespeare would call too much ado about nothing. Mr. Speaker, once you have received communication of the changes from the minority, the standing orders do not require you to do anything. All you are required to do is to receive. And I've read that Standing Order number 23, and I heard the chair legal saying that there's an element of communication. It is not there. There's no communication. Communication could probably be for pecuniary reasons, Mr. Speaker. We acknowledge that the current whip has staff. The current whip has got certain benefits. The current whip has got accommodation and office, and there has to be order in the manner in which that transition happens. And Mr. Speaker, on the minority side, I believe that that order and respect must be observed, because the people working for the current whip can easily work for the next whip. The office or the benefits the current whip is enjoying must be dealt with in a manner that does not leave her feeling like she's being crucified by this House. Mr. Speaker, we have a de facto whip on this side and a de jure whip on this side. You can be legal but illegitimate. And Mr. Speaker, that's why in our weekend rallies, and the leader of my majority got us wrong. We are saying, yes, William Ruto is the legitimate president, but he is illegitimate in our eyes. The matter of legitimacy was dealt with at the Supreme Court. The matter of illegitimacy is upon us. Mr. Speaker, you can have a legal child, but that child is legitimate. So, even on our side, there is nothing that stops Senator Ledamo Lekina from assuming the duties of the whip. All we need from Mr. Speaker is your communication
or the communication of the clerk to ensure that there's a proper and orderly handing over. And I want to urge the new office bearers that those staff you're going to find in those offices, treat them well. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we are watering down this Senate. This is our second session. We have not processed any single private member's bill. My bill is on the order paper. Release us so that we can start discussing issues. And Mr. Speaker, if you observed, the President went for the induction of the National Assembly. He sent Gachagua to the induction of the Senate. That tells you where the government of today puts the Senate in the pecking order. The President took time to be with governors in Naivasha, and he sends Rigiji to be with senators. That is a position that we are putting ourselves in, and very soon we shall be considered along county assemblies if we continue squabbling instead of...
Okay, Senator Mgatana Danson.
I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on this matter. Mr. Speaker, I am very, very worried that we as a Senate seem to be plowing back our powers, surrendering them to the judiciary, Mr. Speaker. We have fought a long way, and history can bear us, as parliaments, even in the history of the development of parliament, Mr. Speaker. The king in France used to say, "L'État c'est moi," I am the state. He used to be the personification of both parliament, of both the judiciary and the executive. When the philosophers came and provided for separation of power, Mr. Speaker, the parliamentarians continue to struggle to get their space. So, Mr. Speaker, I want us as a House to stand very firmly and protect our space, not just as a Senate, but even on behalf of the other side. Mr. Speaker, I am reading Section 117 of the Constitution that gives us an expanded power of debate within this House, Mr. Speaker. This House has unfettered power to provide its proceedings with complete freedom, total freedom, Mr. Speaker, of interference from judiciary and from the executive. Mr. Speaker, we must fight for that space. Mr. Speaker, I'm also inviting you to look at Section 12 of the National Assembly Privileges and Powers Immunities Act. That act interprets Section 117 by further providing that no proceedings from the courts can stop what is happening in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am urging you, we must fight for our space. If we surrender this space to the courts will take it, because that's how our power is. If we surrender it to the executive will take it, because that's how power is. Power does not provide for vacuum. Let us take our power. Let us not accept injunctions. Mr. Speaker, I am wondering what will happen to us if all court orders came here and stopped debate. We will not be doing anything, Mr. Speaker. Let us make our stand clear. Let us pronounce ourselves and say the Senate will not be hindered by the judiciary.
Senator Beatrice Akinyi.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on my foot to add my voice to the discourse that has been going on here over the last 4 sittings. And to start with the court order that the majority side are asking you to respect, a court order which to me you have been waiting for. Mr. Speaker, reference has been made to a political right of a member, that right must
beg
be.
your pardon, Senator Beatrice. Did you say, what did you say?
I said I add my voice to a discourse that has been before this House over the last 4 sittings, a discourse that was initiated by the minority, but largely now of interest to the majority. Honorable Speaker, as we talk about, Honorable Speaker, as we discuss this issue, I want to remind this House of very serious issues that Kenyans have interest on that we should be discussing. Honorable Speaker, there is the hot issue of the plight of ECD teachers in this country. This House should be taking this all afternoon and all this time we've been using to discuss the political issue on how to solve the challenge of the ECD teachers that have a struggle with our governors and the Salaries and the Remuneration Commission. Honorable Speaker, Kenyans are struggling with a number of issues. Counties have not gotten their money. Some of the counties, I was in some conversation where some counties got their disbursement. The last of it was in October. That, to me, should be a very important issue that should be discussed by this Senate. If I don't mention the issue of drought, we see forests burning. Of concern is grade 6 in secondary school, while grade 8 is in primary, and there are no teachers teaching grade 6 in the secondary schools. What I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, is that as we struggle with the issues of political parties, and as we struggle trying to get a member to have their political right the way they want, I want to remind you, Honorable Speaker, that that same member is recorded here having said that the minority side should take their leadership. So, Honorable Speaker, what...
Thank you. Time is over. Thank you, Senator Nerito John Kinywa.
Asante Bwana Spika. Nataka kuanza kukumwambia kiongozi walio wachache ya kwamba muhini na mhiniwa njia yao ni moja. Bwana Spika, nimeketi kusikiza na kile ambacho tunavutia pande zote mbili watu wanapoongea, Bwana Spika, ni amri ya mahakama. Bwana Spika, koti ikitoa amri yake, mimi kwangu naona ni vizuri tufuate. Kwa sababu tusipokuwa watu wa kufuata amri ya koti, Bwana Spika, na imetolewa vizuri, na wewe ulichofanya kizuri Bwana Spika, haukusema chochote. Umesema amri ya koti. Nimemsikiza seneta hapa Nairobi akisema ya kwamba, na akataja hata seneta wa kutoka Vihiga kusema wao ni watu waliobombea katika ile mambo ya kufuatilia mambo ya mahakama. Bwana Spika, ni lipi linalowasumbua? Kwa sababu kulingana na ule ujumbe ambao umesoma kutoka mahakamani, umesema ya kwamba tarehe 28 watu watakwenda pale, uamuzi uende ukatolewe uamuzi dhabiti. Bwana Spika, hawa wote ni mawakili walivyosema. Seneta Okongo Omogeni, hata senior counsel yuko pale yule mwingine. Vile vile hata kiongozi walio wachache. Ni lipi hili ambalo ni nzito zaidi kwa wao kwenda katika mahakama na kutoa ule ushahidi badala ya kuja hapa Bwana Spika kuongea kukuambia wewe? Nikisoma katika mambo ya seneti na bunge zetu, spika hana macho, spika hana masikio. Wewe umeleta ujumbe ambao umepata kutoka kwa koti Bwana Spika. Hawa ndugu zangu ambao ni mawakili, hata naona wa kutoka Makueni akitingiza akipasa sauti chake Bwana Spika, hawa wanapaswa kwenda mahali ambapo panafaa. Waende katika mahakama, watetee mambo ambayo wanasema katika mahakama. Basi Bwana Spika, huo ujumbe utaletewa wewe kama vile ulivyoletwa hapa, na wewe utausoma. Ikiwa utakuwa unasema ya kwamba vile wanavyotaka kiranja wao aweze kuweko yule anamtaka, Bwana Spika, wewe hauna budi kufanya vile. Lakini kwa sababu sisi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya Ni jambo la kuudhi sana Bwana Spika, ikiwa sisi tutakuwa ni watu ambao tufuati vile amri za mahakama. Bwana Spika, nimekuwa nimeketi katika jumba hili muda wa muhula uliopita Bwana Spika. Nikasikia Orengo akiwa ameketi hapa akasema mahakama ndiyo suluhu nikiwa nimetendewa jambo. Bwana Spika, ikiwa wewe utakuwa haufuati vile ambavyo koti zetu zinavyosema, Bwana Spika, sisi hatuna budi. Sheria tunazoketi hapa kuzitengeneza Bwana Spika, sheria zile zinapaswa zipelekwe katika koti zetu ndio wale waanze kufanya uamuzi. Bwana Spika, itakuwa ni jambo la kuvunja moyo sana, ni jambo lisilo na manufaa ikiwa sisi tutakaa hapa tutunge sheria. Baada ya kuzitunga sheria, alafu koti zile ambazo tunataka kupatia mamlaka ya kufanya kazi zake, tunasema sisi hatuzitambui, hatuziheshimu. Bwana Spika, tutakuwa tunafanya jambo lisilo la manufaa, na sisi kama wabunge tunapaswa tuwe tunasema mambo na tunaamini mambo ambayo tunayosema Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, mimi nakusihi Bwana Spika ya kwamba ikiwa koti imesema ya
kuna ombi limefika hapa kwa dharura, lazima nipeane kwa Senator Asike Kristo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am generally a very sensible, thinking human being. My life has taught me the things that are important and the things really that can fall to the side. Mr. Speaker, I haven't said a word in the last 4 sittings because I have not been given an opportunity to prosecute the things that matter to the constituents that I am here to represent. Persons with disabilities are not getting their voice heard because we have been sat here for days over an issue that the standing orders say is quite a simple matter. Mr. Speaker, you start every single session with a prayer. I take that prayer very, very seriously, as I'm sure the rest of us do, to look at matters in front of us fairly, because the Lord himself has been pleased to put us here to represent Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, how I wish that you would have given the communication as per the standing orders last week as quickly as you have done today on the PPDT. Mr. Speaker, the word divorce has been used severally by the majority side. This seems like an analogy that I've heard and we all have heard many times, which is that there's a divorce dispute. A couple have decided that for whatever reasons they are going to move on, but the neighbor who really wasn't really involved in the matter has unfortunately been thrown into the issue. And now the neighbor is involved in all that is ensuing afterwards, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it seems to me that it was a very simple matter of communication that has now turned into burning the entire house down. For no...
Senator Asike, you have 1 more minute. Kindly wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I wish to say that it was a simple communication that has now burnt the house down. We are the upper house, National Assembly the lower house, but it seems like the National Assembly is the lower house with an upper hand because of issues like this that we are prosecuting, which have really no consequence to the normal Kenyan, to the average Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. I beg, Mr. Speaker, that you don't let this issue carry on any further, because there are matters that are of much importance to Kenyans. They don't understand what is going on in this house. Let me be honest, we all know that. And I pray, Mr. Speaker, that you will make the communication, especially as Sifuna has said on deputy, if that has not been put in the PPDT.
So, honorable senators, we have entreated enough on this matter for almost 1.5 hours. I'll give you 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the only matter which has not been addressed is sub judice. Sub judice, once a matter is already live here, then immediately the courts respect that and they don't interfere with the matter. Once a matter is already live in court, then Senate cannot deal with it. What has happened in this matter, these proceedings were prosecuted yesterday, and it's a matter of public notoriety even to the tribunal that the matters were already live in Senate. So we will deal with this matter in court on 28th. It's a matter of preliminary objection there in court, and I'm sure the suit will be disposed at the same day. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Bagweni, Senator. Actually, that will really relieve this chair from all these agony. If you're in my socks or my shoes, you must know what I'm carrying on my shoulders. I can see today Senator Sifuna is really sympathetic with me. And that I mentioned is my children senator. I think moving forward now, you should be my good friend. Yes. So, honorable senators, I think this matter should rest there for today, so that we can make some progress with the other business of the day. But I really want to thank you, and most sincerely, because today we have really exhibited good conduct as senators. The country is happy from both sides. We have argued enough. Both sides have their points, and this is what is going now on debate. This is house for debate, house of debate. Senior, what is it again?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Kadrimuma, are you trying to compete with the elder? That you are complaining, you have given him a minute. The council of the elders will curse you, so just keep quiet. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sorry. I'm coming at the tail end of the debate. But, Mr. Speaker, you have been very patient with us today, and I commend you for that. Mr. Speaker, what we are discussing here is not legal or even standing orders, because the standing orders are very clear that once the political party has communicated, then the matter goes to the Speaker, and the Speaker just, communicates. That's all. But, Mr. Speaker, the issue we are discussing here is more political than legal or even according to our standing order. Mr. Speaker, the political party, which is the Jubilee, have clearly declared that they are supporting the Kenya Kwanza. And, Mr. Speaker, why should they stick to the side? I mean, here we are not going to be whipped by a Jubilee. But because they have already decided to join the Kenya Kwanza. And the reason is because Kenya Kwanza is poaching our members from this side. Mr. Speaker, if they stop this bad habit of poaching from our side, Mr. Speaker, these issues we are discussing here, forth and back, this is because of interference by the majority side politically. And we are ready to face you politically, but you should not continue to interfere, yes, with our members. You have already poached them, and we have given them to you. So why are you still interfering with us?
At least a comment on Sifuna, because he has not been enjoined.
Thank you. Senator Nyonka, who are you informing? Senator Buru Ondinga?
Yes, sir.
But Dombonde is now on the floor.
No, Mr. Speaker, if you just give me a minute, sir. It's so important. I've been waiting, sitting here for the last 3 hours.
No. Senator Nyonka, just a minute. I will give you a chance.
Speaker, I know I shouldn't be on the floor when you are there, but gentlemen, relax.
Senator
Take
Nyonka.
it easy. You are in power now. Power is transitory.
Under Senator Nyonka.
Power is transitory. Relax.
Under Senator Nyonka. Honorable Senators, I'm making my second communication. Honorable Senators, in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, we have 10 teachers from Mundi Awori Primary School in Busia County who are in the Senate on an education tour. I request each member of the group to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the usual Senate tradition. They are one, Nobati Baraza Peri, and teacher, Eunice E. Bwile, deputy and teacher, Tolin F. Awino, teacher, John O. Onditi, a teacher, Bonaventure Luyemba, a teacher, Boniface Wanjara, also a teacher, and the following 3 other teachers, Murekano Ann, Jacqueline Ngila, and then we have Vincent Oyobo on charge of welfare. And lastly but not the least, Juma A.U. Jospat from the Examination Council. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Next order. Who has given you the opportunity now, Senator, Minority Leader? How can you just stand up and start speaking, even without the mic? Have your seat and just communicate appropriately. Do you have? I think we concluded that order, Minority Leader. And from last week, I said you cannot compel the Speaker to make decisions on the chair. No, today I might lose on you again. No, you know, I've been so lenient the afternoon, and now you are taking me back again to the same thing we have concluded. Honorable Minority Leader. So who is the one of the court order? And he not to have the court order. The same court can clear him. You argue those issues in court. So who is making that judgment? That is the issues you should do on Monday, the 28th. The court order is very clear. And I'm happy Senator Manzo is very well equipped with this information. He said there are things you do during the mention on Monday. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Order.
Order number 4, petitions.
Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Chairperson, Standing Committee on Education. You have their papers today?
Mr. Speaker.
Consult the chair, kindly consult.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, the 21st of February, 2023. Mr. Speaker, this is the report of the Standing Committee on Education on its consideration of the County Vocational Educational and Training Bill 2022, Senate Bill number 3 of 2022. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Sifuna?
Mr. Speaker, we do appreciate that the chair has been very patient and allowed people to debate. The question we're asking ourselves is, what was the point of all those submissions? Because there is only one question we wanted your guidance on. The matters not covered by this court case, when will that communication be made? Please, Senator, allow me to address a question to the Speaker.
I'm able to multitask. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, we just want guidance on when the communication that is not covered by the court order will be made. All, that is all. Then the rest of the matters before the court, we will go to the courts. We have no problem.
Proceed.
Should I proceed, Mr. Speaker? I'm saying the only question we're asking ourselves is when will the pronouncement or the communication be made over the position that is not covered by the court case? Because as we have said, Mr. Speaker, and the court order is before you, the case is specific to the question of the seat of the whip. It does not cover the seat of the deputy whip. Mr. Speaker, when can we have that communication? That's all we're asking.
You know, Senator, Nairobi Senator Sifuna, you know the issue of when is what has caused us all this problem. If there is anything that has been not covered, that has not been covered by the court order, then that matter I will look into the court order and then I will communicate. But now the when and how, you leave that to the office, to my office to communicate. And also, you know, I don't work in isolation. We work with a team of experts who run the house. So we'll be able to go through the court order and advise. Thank you. Mr. Senator Ososi. I thought you should be now crafting some communication because you are an expert in this matter.
Mr. Speaker, I have had the benefit to look at the detailed orders issued by the court. And since in your communication, you have somehow alluded to that court order being part of the documents that are guiding your decision this afternoon. But one important issue is that the detailed order seems to suggest that this House reviews the decision it has made in regards to the Senate Business Committee. Now, I don't know how that will be done because we already made a decision. We now have a proper Senate Business Committee constituted. So by admitting that order to this House, what is the way forward, Mr. Speaker? Because, and that's why Senator Omugeni was requesting that that order be tabled before the House. We discuss it because there are some fundamental issues in that order which are going to affect this House fundamentally, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Haji.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the proceedings and the submissions by the members. And I would not want to correct my elder who has spoken here before me that, and stated that Jubilee has been poached and has moved to the Kenya Kwanza side. I want to make it very clear. As a ranking member of Jubilee, we have not left the Azimio coalition. And also, it is very imperative and important that we make it very clear as Jubilee members that we are founding members of Coalition Azimio. And we have invested heavily in Azimio coalition. And if anybody on our side has a problem with Jubilee, it is not for us to leave Azimio. And there is no way they can remove us from Azimio. The bone of contention, Mr. Speaker, sir, between us and our colleagues is an ideological difference. That the president and the Kenya Kwanza government is a legitimate government, but in their eyes, they are illegitimate. Whereas in Jubilee, we're arguing that the Kenya Kwanza government and the president of the Republic of Kenya are legitimate through and through. That is the difference. And Mr. Speaker, sir, for the majority leader, for the minority leader to stand here and mislead the House, that the dispute is between, the minority side is between Fatuma Dulo, Senator of Isiolo, and the minority side is misleading the House. First, they came for our Public Service Commission seat. Then they came for Senator Kamar, Professor Kamar, in the House Business Committee. Now they are coming for Senator Dulo. Who is next? So should we just sit? Exactly. Should we just sit aside and watch them cannibalize the members of Jubilee one by one? And they come to this House and say that the Speaker cannot referee between the political parties, which is fair. If the Speaker cannot do it, the courts can do it. And that's why Senator Dulo and Jubilee went to court to stop this injustice which is going on here. We have not left Azimio. We have a difference. And I stood here last week and said that we should sit down as members of the coalition and iron out our differences. But the members here do not want to do that. So what choice are we left with? They cannot have their cake and eat it too. Mr. Speaker, and that's why we will stand with Senator Fatuma Dulo. They took our House. We will stand, the two of us. It doesn't matter. We will stand and we will fight our case. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chalge, let's hear from this side.
Mr. Speaker, I rise under Standing Order 190 on the Senate Business Committee and its role, Mr. Speaker, and also on the presiding of the House of the Speaker, that is Standing Order number 18 and 19, and also Standing Order number 17 on the conduct of the business, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue, you have given a ruling that you shall communicate. It is only fair that if there is any decision, and I'm surprised because my friends here, including Senator Otsozi, are alleging that they have not seen a court order, including Senate Minority Leader. Yet Senator Sifuna, Mr. Speaker, if you are keen, he was waiving a court order. So, and you used it when you are presenting yourself, through you, Mr. Speaker, just protect me so that I prosecute my point, is that this intellectual dishonesty is unfair, Mr. Speaker. Because you have given a ruling, why are they challenging your authority, yet they want your authority to use to prosecute the agenda, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is out of order. If there is any issue, Mr. Speaker, you don't sit alone in Senate Business Committee. The membership of Senate Business Committee includes the Speaker as the chairperson, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, the Senate Majority Whip, and the Senate Minority Whip. So if there is any issue that it needs to be tabled or to be prosecuted through the normal procedures, Mr. Speaker, it should be through the Senate Business Committee where you preside over, Mr. Speaker. They should not make the country believe as if the decisions you make in this House, or even now you carry order of business in this House, is because as Senator Katuri Murungi, not as the House of the Speaker, which is Senate Business Committee, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, to go on record, Mr. Speaker, that even Senator Oburu Odinga has alleged that we are poaching. I don't know whether that is parliamentary or not. But the point is that, Mr. Speaker, as Kenya Kwanza and as a ruling coalition, Mr. Speaker, we need to be honest with this country. Because if you are not respecting the rule of law, Mr. Speaker, then why are we here, Mr. Speaker? And therefore, even Senator Haji, Mr. Speaker, Senator Haji and Senator Oburu Odinga, Mr. Speaker, Kenya coalition, Mr. Speaker, as a ruling coalition, everybody is welcome. Even if today ODM wants to join government and defect to government, there is no problem. Because that is the essence of political parties' democracy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm still on point of order, Mr. Speaker. I don't know why Senator Ledama is getting agitated, and I was listening to him, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, let no one intimidate you, challenge your authority. You are the authority, an absolute authority, Mr. Speaker. If you have made a ruling that we proceed with Senate Business Committee, so be it. Anybody who misbehaves and rule, Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 123, 121, they should be thrown out, the way I was done.
Honorable Senators, I think this issue is well placed to it. It shouldn't be. Yeah? I want to give Senator Onyonka 1 minute and we conclude this matter.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. I really beg you, sir, that I'm beginning to be very discouraged being in this house because I hardly get an opportunity to speak when I have to. And my seniority should give me precedent. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, under the Powers and Privileges Act, if you sit and look at what that act talks about, you as the Speaker of this House has no business discussing or deliberating the issues which are taking place between Jubilee and the Azimio coalition. Mr. Speaker, I really want to congratulate my brother Mungatana. You've been in this house for a very long time. What you have said today has made me have extreme amount of respect for you. Let us not sacrifice this house on the expediency of the political wars that are taking place in this country. Let us protect this house because, Mr. Speaker, this house is protected for me to come and discuss anything, particularly issues of national interest. And I may not be able to speak them out there because somebody may sue me and say that I have actually destroyed the name and made allegations against them which are not true and they're all false. But this house, the privilege and the protection that I have in this house allows me to discuss anybody and anything so long as it's within the law. That is the standing orders and the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to beg with you, be greater than many of us, be greater than even yourself. Make a ruling that protects the Senate. Allow the two parties to go and fight out there, but allow this house to be independent and for the house to do what it is legitimately meant
Senator
to do.
Onyonka, I gave
Thank you,
guidance
Mr. Speaker.
to the way forward. I did that. And I want us to make progress. Kindly, next order. Next order. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Senator Waume Wamatinga. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I allows to give, yes. I think, Mr. Speaker, sir,
You know, Senator
I
Orekina,
think
you
the
cannot do
taxpayers
the whole process.
sent us here to talk about these
I've
things.
given you a lot of time to air your issues.
It is.
And I gave guidance on way forward, what we need to do. We cannot live on one standing order from 2 p.m. There is nothing new even you are quoting. There is nothing new. Quote. Just a minute, Senator Wamatinga. Which is standing order? Yes, proceed on what?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on standing order number 2 on interpretation of the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, let us not act as if we just dropped out of school yesterday. We are guided by this standing order, Mr. Speaker. These standing orders, Mr. Speaker, define what a whip is, Mr. Speaker. And what you're being invited to, Mr. Speaker, is by the chair violating these standing orders. Standing order on interpretation says a party whip means a senator designated by a parliamentary party as the party whip for the purpose of transaction of business in the Senate and includes the majority whip and minority party. In the interpretation, it further defines a parliamentary party, and I will read it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a parliamentary party, and I'm happy to read it here on interpretation, means a party or coalition of parties consisting of not less than 10 senators. Mr. Speaker, seriously, if we cannot respect our standing orders, If we cannot respect our standing orders, what exactly are we doing? What example are we showing to future leaders?
So what is
Mr.
out of
Speaker?
order now?
Mr. Speaker, I do not want to say the chair is completely out of order, but I just want to say that by violating this standing orders.
Who has violated the standing order?
Mr. Speaker, the chair, unfortunately, with all due respect, is violating the standing orders.
You're out of order, Senator
Mr.
Ndama.
Speaker, I have indicated clearly
Next
that
order.
he's violating the standing order.
Next order.
Mr. Speaker,
Next order.
with all due respect.
Oh, Amatinga, proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Senator
Mr.
Amatinga,
Speaker, sir,
proceed.
I arise to give notice of a motion enhancing highway safety and conveniency that I and Senator Mohammed Faki together felt that we should Mr. Speaker, sir, let me say that this Friday I'll be laying to rest one of my nephews who I lost through a road accident at the age of 21, and therefore feel that this is very, very important to us. That aware that 67% of the road crash fatalities and injuries in the country comprise of economically and productive age groups between 15 and 64 years, and that the importance of good post-crash care reduces death and disability, and the suffering of the road crash survivors creates the urgent need for an effective emergency medical care system and elements and process on our highways. Mr. Speaker, sir, further aware that lives and properties are lost or irreparably damaged daily on the major highways in the country due to the accidents and the explosion of fuel tankers, and the lack of accessible road and side amenities such as medical clinics, rescue centers, fire engines, and ambulances hamper efforts to mitigate the carnage caused by accidents, rescue lives, and put out fires. Cognizant that setting up safe stopping points for the road users at regular intervals with the necessary roadside amenities such as fuel stations, parking space, restaurants, telephone booth, minor repair shops, medical facilities, and toilet enhances total travel experience, and lack of these points make it impractical for drivers to stop as often as they would wish, resorting to driving-related fatigue, a significant contributor to the accidents on the highways. Further cognizant that provision of the amenities such as ambulances, fire trucks, and satellite medical clinics to provide emergency services to the road accident victims would save lives lost daily on the major roads. Acknowledging that the governments across the world, such as France and Germany, have taken the task of setting up such amenities through incorporation of the basic provision in their road and transport structure through different models of public-private partnership, risk or ownership. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that the Kenya National Highway Authority, in collaboration with the Council of Governors, to come up with a policy framework on the incorporation of road reserves for roadside amenities in all highway designs. The Ministry of Health, Roads, Transport and Public Works, in conjunction with the Council of Governors, to undertake a survey to ascertain the specific amenities required but not available on the existing highways, such that satellite medical clinics, fire trucks and ambulances, and identify the most convenient location to develop them. And the Ministry of Roads and Transport, in conjunction with the Council of Governors, to develop public-private partnership guideline on leasing of the road reserves to developers, financing and construction of the amenities, and the packaging of the incentives to attract investors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
We have several statements. If you still have some energy, or you can wait for the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I arise on the request for a statement on the Form 1 intake in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Order 53, Section 1, to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Education regarding the Form 1 intake in the country. In the statement, the committee should outline the criteria for selection and procedure followed in enrolling students in Form 1 in Kenya. State the efforts that are taken into consideration when allocating Form 1 position to a student, giving reasons why students are seldom enrolled to the schools they select. Explain why these students, some of whom are 14 years old or younger, are made to travel extra long distances across several counties to join Form 1 classes, yet they are equally good schools within their counties. Fourth, provide details of what happens to Form 1 positions when students fail to report to the schools they had been selected to join. 5, clarify whether there are any plans by the Ministry of Education to streamline the procedure in order to ensure a better process during future Form 1 selections. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a very, very important affair, and we would want the Committee on Education, owing to the fact that some of the people are as young as 14 years, they do address it.
That will be well handled by the committee. We have to, let us have all the statements then. You keep your comments. We have two statements from the Senator for Kisumu County. Professor Odhiambo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have two statements this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, sir, the first statement is on disaster preparedness in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding disaster management preparedness in Kisumu County. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee should, 1, give details on the initiatives the county government has taken to guarantee disaster management readiness, prevention, mitigation, response, and recovery in case of a disaster. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, state whether the county has a well-equipped firefighting brigade with an adequate and well-trained staff complement capable of managing disasters in the county, noting that in the recent past, the county has been faced by fire disasters in trading centers such as Katito, Paponditi, amongst others, most of which received no response from the county government. Thirdly, to indicate whether the county government of Kisumu has conducted public trainings on fire safety and first aid, and if there are public emergency lines that locals can call in the event of a fire break. And lastly, list the number of fire-related disasters in Kisumu County in the past 12 months, stating the nature of the response by the county fire department and the amount of loss and damage that impacted and that the people have suffered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, my second statement is on the invasion of the Ahero rice fields by Quelea birds in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries on the invasion of the rice fields by Quelea birds in Kisumu County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, appraise the Senate of measures put in place by both the national government and the county government of Kisumu to control the invasion of rice fields of a Ahero irrigation scheme by thousands of Quelea birds that are destroying hundreds of acres of rice plantations each day. Secondly, to state the measures in place to compensate farmers in a Ahero irrigation scheme whose rice plantations have been destroyed by Quelea birds, noting that rice farming is the only means of livelihood for residents of Ahero and Kano. Thirdly, to state the efforts put in place, if any, to improve rice production in Kabonyo, Kanyagwal, and Ahero schemes, and lastly, to outline preventive measures and policies, if any, that the ministry has put in place to contain killer birds in order to ensure that rice farmers' hard efforts are in future not ruined by birds. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Next is Senator Enoch. You can see he's not around. Senator Mohamed Chute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm requesting for a statement on the acquisition and distribution of relief supplies by the county government of Marsabit and the neighboring county governments. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on the acquisition and distribution of relief supplies by the county government of Marsabit and the neighboring county governments, sourced by the county's development fund. In the statement, the committee should, 1, disclose the nature, type, quality, packaging, and price of the relief supplies distributed to the residents of Marsabit, Mandera, Isiolo, Wajir, Samburu, and Turkana counties that have been severely affected by the drought. 2, provide a detailed list of beneficiaries and distribution channels used in supplying the relief supplies and water tracking per ward in all the affected counties. 3, state whether the projects were tendered for, providing details of who won the awards. 4, establish the total amount that has been utilized in the acquisition and distribution of relief supplies from the development fund in all the 6 counties. And outline 5, if there are plans in place by the above-mentioned county governments to implement and shift to cash transfer programs so as to have more communities benefit from similar projects. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chute. You have 2 other statements from Senator Murango.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to request for a statement from the Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism on the ownership, status, and revival of Moya cotton ginnery. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide a status report on the ownership of the parcel of the land occupied by Moya cotton ginnery, detailing the acquisition process of the land, its acreage, and the legal ownership. 2, inform the Senate of the governance and administrative structures of Moya cotton ginnery before it collapse. And 3, state measures, if any, the government has put in place to ensure that the Moya cotton ginnery is revived to cater for the renewed interest in BT cotton growing in Kirinyaga County, resulting from the need to diversify to more resilient crops variety due to ground bombing. Mr. Speaker, the second statement, again on the same Standing Order 53-1, I stand to seek the statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare regarding the registration and welfare of people living with disability, PWD. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state the number of persons registered with the National Council for Persons with Disability, NCPWD, as living with disability from the year 2022 to date. 2, inform the Senate on the process of registration of persons with disability, PWDs, recommending ways to simplify the procedure and make registration services more accessible. 3, outline the criteria used by the government to distribute assistive devices to PWDs, stating why a number of disabled persons still lack access to the necessary assistive devices, and further spell out measures, if any, put in place to ensure PWDs get assistive devices and attendant health services for their various forms of disability. And lastly, explain the cause for the increased number of people living with disability begging on the streets of major towns and urban areas across the country, and the steps being taken by the government, if any, to provide them with the necessary social assistance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Senator Yeduku Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to request for a statement on the status of land discharge process in Lamu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise person to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources for the status of land discharge process in Lamu County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide a status report on the settlement fund trustee mandated to settle residents on alienated government land or land purchased by the government from the private owners, stating how many settlements have been successfully relevant law was enacted and how many are pending. Number 2, cause the publishing of parcel of land in Lamu County under the custody of the settlement fund trustee, informing the Senate of accrued charges for each piece of land. Number 3, state the time frame upon which parcels of land charged by the settlement fund trustee should be transferred to residents of Lamu County after residents settled charges against their parcels of land. Number 4, state reason for the failure by the government to facilitate the discharge process of the said parcels of land, noting that this has had a negative impact on the growth of the county as the owners are unable to subdivide or make transfers. And number 5, Mr. Speaker, outline plans if any, the government has put in place to ensure the discharge process is hastened and a waiver is offered on the accumulated land rates. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Perez Obiko, do you have a statement or yeah, sorry? Yes, proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I arise on Standing Order 52-1 to make a statement on an issue of general topical concern, namely the unacceptable excessive force on disciplinary measures meted against our children by uncouth individuals. Mr. Speaker, children are a blessing who bring so much joy to their parents. The community and indeed the nation as a whole also considers them as an important asset. Further, Article 53(1)(d) of the Constitution expressly provides that every child has the right to be protected from abuse, neglect, harmful cultural practices, or all forms of violence, inhuman treatment and punishment, and hazardous or exploitative labor. The rights of children have also been protected and preserved by a number of legislation, including the Children's Act 2022 and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, Both the Education and Children's Act have given clear guidelines on how to correct pupils when they go wrong in the course of attending schools. Mr. Speaker, while I agree that it is important to mold and correct children, whether at home or in school, to ensure they grow knowing what is right and wrong as they are being brought up, this correction should not be punitive, embarrassing, or inflicting pain, and or to some extent, even grievous bodily harm. Mr. Speaker, there are three cases that have occurred over the recent past, which have greatly disturbed me and have led to this statement. The first incident is that of a widely circulated video clip of a scene allegedly in a school where teachers supervised a traumatic sexual molestation of young children against each other. The said clip drew countrywide attention to what may be happening to our children at the hands of perverted grown-ups who are expected to be protectors or role models and morally upright individuals. Mr. Speaker, the second one was an incident in Korea where one young girl who had run away from home in order to escape from being forced to undergo female genital mutilation and had been under the protection of in a school. When she decided to go back home at the end of the holidays to prepare to return to school, she ended up being badly assaulted, whipped and publicly humiliated by young men allegedly under the direction of her own brother. She has been accused of being a disgrace to her family for refusing to undergo FGM practice and opted to pursue education when schools resumed. This incident is unacceptable as the government has a whole department funded by taxpayers to champion anti-FGM practices among communities and to protect girls threatened by these traditions, cultures, and rituals. Mr. Speaker, a third incident that came to the public attention happened in Kisii area where a young man is bound up with ropes and whipped in front of a girls' parade in school as a punishment. Mr. Speaker, the scary question is, how many more graphic, horrible crimes against the right of children have gone unnoticed, unreported, or intentionally covered up? Whereas the above incidences may appear isolated and remote, it has prompted my concern regarding what kind of punishment is right. Mr. Speaker, what amounts to adequate correction, both within schools and in community environments? Mr. Speaker, I wish to condemn these heinous acts in the strongest terms possible. The acts have obviously traumatized the victims and may have permanent effect in their lives. Teachers, boards of management members, parents, and society in general should be dependable role models, mentors, and good moral champions to ensure such incidences do not continue happening in our society. We cannot stand by while children are brutalized and traumatized in the name of administering punishments. Mr. Speaker, let parents, guardians, and school administrators have compassion while correcting the children under their care whenever they err. We must all uphold respect for the rights of children as provided for in the laws. Anyone messing with children's lives should answer for their irresponsible and unbecoming conduct. I also call for psychological counseling to help remove the trauma visited upon these victims and many others in the society. As a leader and a mother, I am of the view that the Children's Department should work with the law enforcers to take appropriate action if and where necessary in order to safeguard children from abuse, neglect, and violence. Mr. Speaker, sir, last I beseech all leaders all over the country to ensure that the rights of children is safeguarded and protected against such evil deeds. Local leaders and communities, including all clergy and leaders of all faiths, should also remain vigilant and act swiftly whenever any person subjects children to such acts of that amount to either sexually molesting or excessive extreme punishment to the children. They are at their most critical formative and mind development stage, and we must be extremely careful regarding what we allow the minds of our children to pick. Our children must be brought up to be upright, moral, responsible, and law-abiding citizens. Our generation is responsible for the posterity we are preparing for this country. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give one or two comments on these statements, starting with the Senator Akio Mtata, Senator of Busia County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Before I make my comments, allow me to recognize the presence of my constituents. I've 10 teachers from Mudiawori Primary School, which is, by the way, is the best public primary school in Busia. So feel most welcome, and they are here by courtesy of the eminent retired former Vice President, the Honorable Mudiawori, who decided to give them a tour of the city in recognition of their performance. And while on the tour of the city, they said, you cannot visit Nairobi and not visit Parliament. So Parliament, so they are winding up their tour, and they have visited the National Assembly, and they are now visiting the Senate. So feel welcome, and thank you very much. As regards the statement made by the Honorable Senator Penina, it's obvious that something has gone amiss in this country. There's a lot of violence being visited upon our innocent children. And if you go back to the biblical times, if you look at what the Christ said,
what is it, Senator Perez Tobiko?
Yes, Perez Tobiko, Senator Perez Tobiko.
Okay.
Yes, if you go back to the biblical, to the New Testament, the Christ himself looked at children and said, to them belongs the kingdom of God. So if we don't look after our children, we cannot claim to be Christians, or we cannot claim to be believers in anything. It means that we don't value what God values. And children are very vulnerable. Children are defenseless. And there are very many videos that have gone around. And some of these videos, the modern cameras usually give the coordinates or the GPS locations of where these crimes happen. So when a video is recorded, any serious police should be able to pinpoint and arrest the perpetrators just by examining the video and looking at the coordinates of where it was recorded. So I hope that our police will be proactive in that, and also pray that the law on children, the Children's Act, be revisited and maybe higher sanctions be passed for people who abuse children, especially within the framework of schools and families where children should be feel the most safe. So as I stand to support this motion, I plead with this House that we rally behind the motion, the statement, and make sure that anybody perpetrating violence against children lives to regret it. And this violence against children should be taken further at the institutional level. I think that we should get to a point whereby the government should provide lunch for primary school children. It's extreme violence to have a child go to school on an empty stomach and expect the child to stay for all the hours that they go to school. So I think some form of a feeding program should be initiated. And for my brothers in the bottom-up formation, there's no better bottom-up than raising a child. Because you raise him from the bottom, you raise to a full human being. So within the bottom-up arrangement, let us find a formula for providing children with some form of food. If the former President Arap Moi, may his soul rest in peace, was able to give children milk when Kenya had a much smaller economy, when the budget, if you look at the budget of Kenya those days, was just in a few shillings, and he was able to do that. With our trillions that we do today, why can't we do that? Feed our children, and also support our farmers in the dairy industry who are struggling. I know where my brother, Senator Cherargei, comes from. Farmers are struggling to break even. And our feeding program could be one way of an affirmative action that would also support our farmers and also give us a win-win situation whereby our children go to school and at least they're able to get, even if it's a bowl of soup or beans and maize, so that we don't just look at violence in terms of the whips and the kicking around, but look at violence in terms of sustaining a ritually neutral environment where a child can grow and thrive. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Mutata. You know, we are limited by time. I want to give maybe one more senator. Senator Cherargei, you have done enough today. Let us give another senator, Senator Mutinda. That is enough for the Nandi people, what you sent in the early afternoon. Okay, proceed. Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes, kindly.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I do rise to support the statement from our colleague, Senator Peris Tobiko, on the issue. As a leader, as a parent, I agree that the joy as parents because of our children is something that is very godly and something that we actually are very proud of. What we've seen in the social media in terms of what is happening to our younger generation is actually a very sad state of affairs. And I want to quote Article 53, which states very clearly that the Constitution protects our children from abuse, from neglect, harmful cultural practices, all forms of violence, inhuman treatment, and punishment. And I would want to really humbly ask our authorities, as Senator Mutata has indicated, that these culprits can actually be apprehended and the justice be done to these children and sets an example to the generation that is coming up, and thinking that this can just go free. Action needs to be taken. If it's not taken, and hence, Mr. Speaker, that is how we continue seeing children in our institutions of learning burning schools. If we do not take actions, if we do not actually condemn this much further, then we are going to get into more critical situations that we cannot even be able to get out. So to support Senator Paris on this statement, I urge that the law takes its course, the police be able to take action, and to the parents and to the learning institutions where we take our kids for the knowledge that they need to have. It is a high time that we also know as a country we are in the year 2023. Things have changed, yes. We are in a very digital space with all the sort of gadgets that we have. We cannot say that we're going to deny the modernity that is in place, but at the same time, as parents, let us try and offer more time to our kids, be able to communicate the morals for the betterment of our future generation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Candy, let's go to the next one. What is it, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on standing order number 52, 3, and 53, 3B. Mr. Speaker, just like today, week in, week out, from the last session, you have been referring these statements to committees. And Mr. Speaker, I never miss sittings. I'm yet to see a single chair of a committee bring here to table a statement in response to the issues members have been raising. Personally, Mr. Speaker, I'm waiting for the last 2 months for a statement on pending bills in Kakamega. And many senators in this House supported the request and brought in the need to address pending bills in their respective counties. Mr. Speaker, could you guide the House? A, should we expect those statements, responses to be tabled? And B, if should we, as we expect, what is the time limit? Some of the statements, Mr. Speaker, are on issues of security. You would want to know if, for example, Mr. Speaker, a senator has raised the issue of the police, the personnel deployed in an area and they are not up to it, where you would expect either they would be moved and so on, you would expect an answer. For how long shall we be waiting? Or we are speaking in vain in this House?
Senator Boni Karware, I hear you very well. The chairs have no obligation to report to the floor of the House, but now it means that your statement for 2 months has not been responded to by the relevant ministry. Because what the committee should do, the chair and his team, is to invite any senator who has raised any matter on this floor to the committee sitting. When maybe you summon the relevant offices, maybe the ministries, the CSs, and any other body. Who do you want to inform, Senator William Cheptumo? He is no longer on the floor.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, what Senator Kalwala is raising is really a concern. But Mr. Speaker, what we have been doing, I thought it's just good to share, is that once a member raises a question here or a statement, we take up the issues with the relevant ministry. When a written answer is obtained from the ministry, it is shared with the member. And if there are issues that are not sufficiently responded to in the statement, then we can still do a further inquiry from the department. I think that has been in this House, Mr. Speaker, that is really what happens around here. And it is interesting that perhaps Kalwale has not gotten a statement from the relevant committee 2 months after he raised the question. So I think the problem here is the procedure in which we used to inform members on the responses from the ministries, which is not what we used to do in the other house, Mr. Speaker, as you recall. You were a chair of a committee, I was one, and we used to read those statements before the plenary. So I think that is really the procedure we have now.
I can see some chairs have been agitated, including the chair who has my response, Chair Transport.
Mr. Speaker,
1 minute each, I'll give you.
I do not purport to speak on behalf of the other chairs, because of course you are the chair of the chairs. But all I would want to tell the senator for Kakamega who have raised that issue is that the president had seen this problem. And that's why he proposed that we should be having ministers or the CSs at the floor of this house so that they can be answering questions with the speed that is required. Mr. Speaker, I think before appointing for any other chairman, because of course in my committee, those who have requested statements have been written for, so that they can appear before the committee and see the responses that we have before we table them in this house. It's better we sit down as a Senate, even without waiting for the National Assembly, that we come up with the right procedures so that we can be inviting those CSS in this house to answer those questions. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that because, and that's why I had a standing order waiting for your eye. For example, we do have a statement that was raised here by the Senator for Embu on the issue of delocalized teachers, Mr. Speaker. When I try to ask for the same statement with the tweak or with a little bit of difference, I'm told I cannot raise such a statement. Yet it is something that is, of course, in regards to the teachers who are working in other counties, but they come from Kiambu. Mr. Speaker, my teachers are suffering in Narok. My teachers all the way from Mount Kenya are suffering in Narok. But we cannot ask that statement because somebody asked that statement 2 weeks ago or 2 days ago. Yet that statement has not been answered to here. My request to you, Mr. Speaker, because you have that power, when you feel or when you look at a statement and see that it has some urgency, give it some timeline, Mr. Speaker. Tell the chair to give that answer within specific timeline, Mr. Speaker, so that we can have some statements that are answered or reported back to the House with immediate effect. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I'm constrained with time, so I want to give Senator Ngururi 1 minute, kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm really glad that Senator Halwale has raised this because it's an issue I've been dealing with personally. I'm not a chair. I was a vice chair, but I was de-whipped because I was also literally pushing for the efficiency of the business of a committee. I personally brought a statement, several statements to the floor of the House actually, concerning, some of them were issues on the Safaricom registration, issues on protecting Kenyans' data. And you know, Mr. Speaker, being in the committee as a vice chair, I could see the bureaucracy that was being practiced, not necessarily by the chair, but there was a lot of dynamics there. And so the efficiency of that committee actually, Mr. Speaker, allow me, do not cut me off, I have seen you. This is a very serious matter. And so therefore, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, if we are not going to give timelines, because can you imagine a statement I raised on registration of SIM cards last year has not been dealt with? A statement I raised on issues of ICT and protection of data, a simple thing such as actually just seeking information. We did not even deal with it. And the only thing that happened to me, Madam Speaker, is that I was de-whipped. And I was removed from that committee because I kept on demanding that the efficiency of the secretariat has to be put, into account. So, Madam Speaker, as we are dealing with all these statements, in fact, I've now learned I'm no longer bringing statements to the House. I'm bringing motions, I'm tabling bills, and I'm going to make as much noise as possible, because if the committees are going to continue dealing with issues to the effect that by the time they're bringing the reports, the matter is no longer relevant. How is it relevant on registration? Safaricom have done what they wanted to do. They've moved on. We still have not received any tangible, and as Vice Chair in that committee, I can tell you that there was a lot of bureaucracy that was engineered, and I've actually reported several issues with the Secretariat, and so therefore thank you, Senator Halwale, because this is the matter that I dealt with, and even if I'm not Vice Chair, I will be Vice Chair in this seat here, and I will ensure that we push for accountability so that our statements don't go down.
What's your point of order, Senator Cherargei?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not a change on the chair. And congratulations, I can see you are wearing our party colors. Madam Speaker, when you look at the Secretariat, and I need guidance on this. Madam Speaker, when you look at Standing Order 52 and 53, 53(3)B, the Speaker may allow comments in relation to the statement for not more than 15 minutes. I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, being aware that we are past statement hour. Number two, which I need your guidance. So Kenyans and everybody should know that when we give comments or when we write on statements of our colleagues, Mr. Speaker, it is provided under the standing orders. Number two, Madam Speaker, Standing Order 53(3) Part 4B. Madam Speaker, I have had the benefit of chairing a committee, and it is known in the annals of history, this House, I was ranked the best. Not only the youngest, but the best, and then Madam Speaker. The committee may invite the senator who requested a statement, the relevant cabinet secretary, or any other person the committee may consider during deliberations on the statement and prepare and table a report on the matter. Table. So I needed, you know, Madam Speaker, we need to be fair. This is our standing orders. The standing order number 1 talks about the precedent, the tradition, the rule of law, the tradition of the parliament that has been set. It says, after the deliberations, the report must be tabled. Madam Speaker, what we are treated to is theater of absurd. Because if the chairpersons of these committees, and I know they had, Madam Speaker, you know, the chairpersons of these committees are, in quotes, cabinet secretaries, or they are proposed. If they're having a problem accessing cabinet secretaries, the CSS, because I'm told some CSS might not be picking calls and PSS, yet the president is picking our calls, then they should say it. So that, because, Madam Speaker, last year, just what Senator Gloria said, I requested a statement on the Tokyo scandal of our athletes. No one has responded up to date. Because allegedly the CSS and PSS, and if the chairpersons are having a problem, Madam Speaker, they should be able to speak to the majority side and the majority leadership, including the majority whip here, and bring, so that they don't come and say, Madam Speaker, we cannot proceed because the minister or the PSS, even as we wait for the constitution to be amended, for CSS and PSS to sit here, we must be efficient and effective, because we are using money, resources from Exchequer, Madam Speaker. Finally, Madam Speaker, the part 2. The law says, and it is our standing order, unless we delete today, may prepare and table a report on the matter. Other senators, I can be invited to Committee of Social Welfare, Labor and Social Welfare. I can go and sit, deliberate. But maybe other senators are waiting for the report to be tabled to give their comments and transmit for implementation, Madam Speaker. So my request, Madam Speaker, even as we proceed on this matter.
Please wind up.
I'm winding up, Madam Speaker, is that the report must be tabled. And therefore saying just we can go somewhere, sit with the committee, deliberate. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, you know, as a friend of the committee, I don't have powers to sign the report nor vote on the report because I'm not a member of the committee. So where do I get my recourse? I get my recourse on the floor of the House among other colleagues. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
On that issue of statements, I hear your interjection, and from the reading of Order 53(3)B, it is clear that a statement may be prepared and tabled on that matter. It would be good practice that chairpersons of the committee ensure that they conclude on statements that are raised against the committees, and they are encouraged to table. Though the wording of the order is that it may prepare and table a report on that matter, may then means it's almost discretionary, but the good practice would be that the committees or the chairpersons of the committees table a report so that issues are responded to and issues are given a closure. So I believe that should be the final intervention on that matter. And clerk, call the next. It's a point of order, Senator Mudigi. Okay. Make it very short.
Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga mkono yale yamezungumziwa hapa, kwa sababu kama ile mambo nisoma mambo ya elimu ni kitu ya kusangaza sana. Utaona itaendelea hivi na itaishia huko msituni, kwa sababu kama kuna sheria, hata rais alisema walimu wote warudi nyumbani kwao. Kama county tuko na jimbo 47, moja ni Embu. Walimu wa Embu wale wako Machakos, jimbo la Machakos, jimbo la Kitui, jimbo la Meru na jimbo la Kirinyaga. Tunastuka sana, kunasemekana hakuna mahali wataenda kwa sababu kaunti ya Embu iko na walimu wengi. Lakini tunauliza, nje wakati wale walimu walipelekwa huko nje ya jimbo la Embu, wale walikuja, kunafaa kufuatiliwe ama komiti iende ifanye upelelezi inakuanji walimu wa Embu waweze kurudi Embu. Akina mama wako karibu miaka 60 wanalilia huko kwa mkubwa wa elimu. Kwa hivyo nauliza tufuatilie vizuri ndio walimu wa Embu waweze kurudi, si ati kwa kupiga makoti, lakini tunajua kama itafanyika katika Embu tutaenda kwa hiyo ofisi ya walimu na tutafoma na hakuna mtu atasimamisha sisi, kwa sababu ni aibu kubwa sana. Kama kulikubaliwa, si wale vile TSC ilipeleka wale iwarudishe na wale wengine waende nyumbani kwao. Asante, Madam Speaker.
I doubt whether that is an intervention or a point of order you are raising, but the point is noted. I doubt if that is a point of order. But I think the idea should be for the chairpersons of the committees to respond and do their work. And they should be encouraged to take stock of all the statements that have been tabled since the commencement of this House and proceed to make sure that we can widen up those issues that have not been responded to as a House. Clerk.
Order number 8, motion, adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the county government additional allocation cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2022-2023.
Call upon the chairperson, Standing Committee on Finance and Budget, to move the motion.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the Senate adopts the report of Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the county government additional allocation cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2022-2023, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 16 February 2023, and that pursuant to Section 17(7) of the Public Finance Management Act and Standing Order 189(3), the Senate approves the county government additional allocation cash disbursement schedule for the monies to be disbursed to county governments and transmitted to the Senate for consideration and approval. The National Treasury is also required to publish and gazette the approved disbursement schedule. Madam Speaker, the purpose of disbursement schedule is to ensure predictable transfers from the National Treasury to county governments of funds. Therefore, it serves as a guide and facilitates predictable flow of funds to county governments. This therefore enables counties to effectively plan implementation of targeted projects and programs in a systematic manner
in order to deliver their critical functions. Madam Speaker, Parliament approved the county government additional allocation bill, which was Senate Bill number 4 of 2022 in November, and it was enacted into law. The President assented to it on the 12th of December 2022. Following the enactment of this law, the National Treasury transmitted to the Senate the county government additional allocation cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2022-2023. This schedule was tabled in the Senate on the 14th of February 2023. Therefore, the disbursement schedule was committed to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget for consideration and subsequent reporting back to the House. Madam Speaker, the committee has considered the cash disbursement schedule and tabled its report in the House for debate and adoption. Madam Speaker, the County Government Additional Allocation Act 2022, as well as the disbursement schedule, has a total of 163 million for conditional grant on supplement for construction of county headquarters and 17.159 billion on conditional allocation finance from proceeds of loans, grants, and from development partners. This conditional allocation from proceeds of loans and grants include the World Bank credit for national agricultural and rural inclusive growth amounting to 3.9 billion. World Bank credit for national agricultural value chain development project amounting to 1.82 billion. World Bank credit of Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture amounting to 2.2 billion shillings. The World Bank credit of water and sanitation development amounting to 3.5 billion shillings. The NIDA grant for primary health and develop system amounting to 1.018 billion shilling. The World Bank credit for financing locally led climate action FLOCA level amounting to 1.034 billion shillings. The Government of Sweden grant for agriculture sector development support program 2 amounting to 665.17 million. German Development Bank amounts, financing drought resilience program in northern Kenya to the tune of 410.
Senator, he's moving a motion. He's moving a motion. What is out of order?
Okay.
Not when moving a motion.
German Development Bank finance.
Moving the motion and then we will take the point of order.
Thank you. Financing drought resilience program in northern Kenya to the tune of 410 million, and World Bank credit for emergency locust response amounting to 1.2 billion. World Bank credit to finance Kenya informal settlement improvement KISIP 2 amounting to 1.3 billion shillings. Madam Speaker, the committee considered cash disbursement schedule and observed the following: that the disbursement will be made in 2 tranches as commitment was made by National Treasury to be done 15th of March 2023 as well as 15th of April 2023, so that within the financial year 2022-2023, the disbursement can be realized. With only 4 months remaining to the end of the financial year, the county governments also need to expeditiously do the appropriation act in order to facilitate the flow of those funds. The disbursement of conditional allocation finance from the national government share of revenue also, we have noted, as it has happened before, will be subject to funds revenue collection of national government. The National Treasury, lastly on the observation, should comply with the schedule as they have indicated to make sure that within the remaining few months of the financial year, the 2 tranches as promised should also be realized. There is need for also
the Senate as well as the county assemblies to tighten the oversight on these funds. Madam Speaker, the committee recommends the following: that the Senate approves the county government additional allocation cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2022-2023, tabled in the Senate on the 14th of February 2023. Number two, the county assemblies should also expedite passage of appropriation bills to ensure that the funds are assessed upon disbursement from National Treasury. And the National Treasury should adhere to the approved disbursement schedule and the proposal they gave of disbursing the entire amount in 2 tranches as required. Madam Speaker, finally, the committee acknowledges National Treasury's effort for their submission of county government additional allocation cash disbursement schedule, which is critical requirement for execution of county government budget. The committee also thanks the Office of the Speaker and the Clerk of the Senate for the support extended to the committee in execution of the mandate. I also wish to thank the members of the committee for their patience and also steadfast in making sure this has been promptly processed. Madam Speaker, I beg to move and call upon Senator Kalwale to second the motion. Thank you.
What is your point of order?
Madam Speaker, I didn't want to interrupt my good friend, Senator Roba, but this is a house of rules, and I'm rising on point of order number 41, because when I look around, we don't have a quorum to transact business in this house. Point of standing order number 41, and I can read it out, Madam Speaker, which talks about the quorum during proceedings of the Senate. 1, if at any time in the course of the proceedings of the Senate, a senator objects that there is not a quorum present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall count the senators present in the Senate or in the committee as the case may be. 2, if on the account under paragraph 1, a quorum does not appear to be present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall cause the division bell to be rung as a division, and if no quorum is present at the expiry of 10 minutes, the 10 minutes the Speaker is in the chair, the Speaker shall adjourn the Senate until the next sitting without a question being put. So, Madam Speaker, we don't have a quorum, and the substantive Speaker was very clear that this Senate henceforth should strictly comply to the standing orders. So I'm asking you to comply to standing order number 41 on quorum during Senate proceedings.
Mr. Clerk, can you confirm whether we have quorum in the House? We have 14 senators. How many senators? 14. Can you count? Count again? Just count again. I authorize the bell to be rung for 10 minutes. We now have quorum. Can you stop the bell? The House resumes. Senator Osotsi, resume your seat. Senator Halwale, continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second this motion as moved by the chair of the committee. Madam Speaker, before I second this motion, I think one of the milestones in the last session was when we passed the bill that was for additional allocation of revenue, Madam Speaker. And I was pleased during the recess, Madam Speaker, to see His Excellency the President send it into law, something which is unprecedented. The Office of the Clerk will tell you that not many parliaments have been able to make law in the first session, but we did, Madam Speaker. I therefore congratulate the President and congratulate colleagues, members of Parliament, the Office of the Clerk, and everybody else who made this industry to come to its fruition. Madam Speaker, why should I commend this? It's because this law, the additional allocation of funds, has paved way for better delivery of health services across the 47 counties. And Madam Speaker, I'm so glad that my county, Kakamega, thanks to this bill, was able to access in excess of 982 million shillings. I want to congratulate the governor of Kakamega. I have seen he's been moving around the sub-counties trying to give out additional supply of drugs, and I want to urge him to give priority out of this particular vote. He should he should avoid the temptation, Madam Speaker, of wanting to channel this money into recurrent expenditure. He should ensure that this money is purely for development within the sector of health. Madam Speaker, as I say this, if you allow me to quote Swahili, Waswahili husema mkema akisifiwa pombe ulitia maji. Having congratulated the governor, he might be thinking that he's doing very well on this particular allocation. I beg to differ. I would like him to desist from the temptation to give money favoring certain counties at the expense of others. We are certain sub-counties at the expense of others. We are a huge county, 2.5 million people, 12 sub-counties, 60 wards. Everybody is in dire need of good health, and therefore he should play the principle of equity to make sure that this money is filled in every corner of the county of Kakamega. Madam Speaker, the chairman, in moving this motion, has spoken to the issue of the disbursement schedule. Colleagues, members of Parliament, may I remind you, and I think you know, that we have the 15th day of the month rule, which was intended by the Second Senate to ensure that on the 15th day of the month, in every account of every county, the famous county revenue fund, by 15th month, the national government should have deposited money into that account. I want to appeal to colleagues, let all of us 47, plus all our delegation, ensure that we are in constant communication with our governors. They be assuring us on the 16th day that yes, the 15th day of the month rule has been respected by the national government, failing which we convene in this house and put pressure on the national treasury to make sure that this money goes to the county revenue accounts. And indeed, Madam Speaker, this is what we are there for, because under this constitution, Article 96, we are expected to protect the interests of the counties and the county governments. Madam Speaker, a message to governors. Governors must resist the temptation to start new projects. It is there. And I don't want to cast aspersions at all on all governors, but some unscrupulous governors, there are a few of them, who are rushing to start new projects so that they can go into little arrangements with the companies and individuals from whom they are procuring these services for personal gain. I want to appeal to them to speak to stalled projects and ensure that ongoing projects do not get stalled again. Why, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, you are a senior lawyer in this country, and you know the principle in law of perpetual succession of government. The principle of perpetual succession of government demands to succeeding governments to ensure that the projects and programs of the projects that they are succeeding are continued to their completion. It's painful, Madam Speaker, that you come to a great county like Kakamega, which enjoys a budget, an annual budget in excess of 15 billion, Madam Speaker, and you go there and you find over a period of 10 years of devolution, during which, Madam Speaker, the governor handled in excess of 200 billion shillings. 200 because there is the donor funding aspect that normally comes in and the additional funds they have been getting. So in a period of 10 years, the governor has handled 200 billion. And what is on the ground? Bohongo Stadium has stalled. Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kakamega has stalled. Shiamahubu Hospital in Shinyalu Sub-County has stalled. Tumboni Milk Dairy Project in Malaba constituency has stalled. Khayega Market, Khayega Market in Shinyalu constituency, Malinya Market in Ikolomani constituency, Nambaja Market in Nabaholo constituency, Nabaholo Market in Nabaholo constituency. They have all stalled, Madam Speaker. Despite 200 billion.
Senator Halole, which one is that which is hey?
That is the musical way of saying ETC, 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 and many others.
That's a new one.
Yes, Madam Speaker, you know I keep on learning from my young children. They teach me many things. These days they don't tell me ETC, ETC. They just say tata. If you are experienced like me, you know you have told them enough, they don't want to hear more. Madam Speaker, that is not meant to be language, but it is meant to deliver the message. This is serious. And I will be moving this Senate, not just for purposes of Kakamega. I'll move this Senate, Madam Speaker, to make a decision on what we shall do. Because in all the counties, you find a new governor comes in and put into the dustbin the ongoing projects. It is happening in Kiambu, across the road here. It happens in your home in Muranga. It is in Kakamega. It is in the home of my in-laws in Kisii. In fact, in Kisii, it is terrible. Senator Arati went there and even found, 46 vehicles driven by 400 drivers. The rot in counties, we are failing. We must put our good brothers and sisters under a very huge microscope. This cannot continue. Otherwise, we will just be saying devolution was meant to message the ego and pleasures of the high and mighty. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I strongly support the motion. Sorry, I was the seconder. You know, Madam Speaker, I was confused by my daughter here. Where has she gone? She told me she was going to second, then I support. I strongly second the motion. Thank you, Senator Mungatana. That's why I always love to know that you always listen to me.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Senate adopts the reports of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the County Government's Additional Allocations Cash Disbursement Schedule for the financial year 2022-2023, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 16th February 2023, and that pursuant to Section 17(7) of the Public Finance Management Act and Standing Order 189-3, the Senate approves the county government's additional allocations cash disbursement schedule for the financial year 2022-2023. I call upon senators to now make a contribution to the motion. I begin with Senator Elsie Ekinyori. Is she here? She's there. Senator Danson Mungatana.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I first of all want to state on the onset that I support this motion, and I have listened carefully, Madam Speaker, to the mover of this motion, the Honorable Senator Robert, the chair of this committee. And I want to record my thanks, Madam Speaker, for the industry and the effort they put as a committee to make sure that this report is presented in good time so that the disbursement can be done timeously. Madam Speaker, I also want to pay my respects to my honorable colleague who seconded this motion, the one and only Senator Khalwale, and he raised many issues, Madam Speaker, that are relevant. Madam Speaker, I wanted to note that in this passing of this motion, there is 163 million that is conditional grant on the supplement of the construction of county headquarters, which is the first bit. Madam Speaker, this is important to us in Tana River County. And if you look into the report, Madam Speaker, you will see that there are 4 counties that are going to benefit from this particular allocation. One of them was Tana River, the other one was Lamu, the other one was Isiolo and Nyandarua. Madam Speaker, this 163 million will come and help Tana River County finish the construction of the county headquarters. Madam Speaker, I feel very embarrassed many times when you visit other county headquarters and you see they have beautiful buildings which are housing the head of the county government. Madam Speaker, if you watched even in the last dispensation, the county government of Machakos, Madam Speaker, a beautiful building and beautiful work that was going on in that county. Madam Speaker, when you come to Kitui, who is our neighbor in Tana River, when you come to Kilifi County, you will see that they have finalized on the construction of the county headquarters. In Tana River County, Madam Speaker, we have not finalized this, and it is my hope, Madam Speaker, that we shall benefit as it is intended, and we hope that with this bunch, then we shall get out of being left behind, as it were, because it seems it's only 4 counties that had not finished in the construction of their county headquarters, and Tana River being one. Therefore, the message we are sending to the governor and the county government is that we are passing this money, and we want to see results on the ground. We want to see proper building, relocation of staff to the correct place so that the working environment can be good for our county. So, Madam Speaker, I want to support this bill so that this money is made available as soon as possible in accordance with the schedule that has been proposed here on the 15th of March and on the 15th of April in those 2 batches that the chairman of this committee, Finance, has proposed. Madam Speaker, I also noted that the second bit of the allocation is 17.15 billion, which is conditional allocations financed from proceeds of loans and grants from development partners. And Madam Speaker, from this report, you will note there is the allocation from World Bank credit for National Agricultural and Rural Inclusive Growth Project, the NAREGIP project. There is the World Bank credit for National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project. There is a World Bank credit for Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project. There is the World Bank project for water and sanitation. There is a World Bank credit facility for locally led climate action, and so on and so forth. Madam Speaker, I wanted to bring to the attention of this House what our President has been championing. Madam Speaker, I speak as the head of the delegation of Pan-African Parliament, and I wanted us to look at what is happening when we access this credit. The chairman of Finance has not told us what is happening. The global north in the world generally has been very unfair as to us who are in the global south. Madam Speaker, the World Bank, being one of the Bretton Woods organs, the Bretton Woods agencies, they have been, believe it or not, giving credit to the global north at something like 0.01%, and you access a big facility for development in your country. When you come to the global south, let's say Kenya wants to access the same facility, Tanzania wants to access the same facility, Zambia wants to access the same facility, you will find that Kenya will go to the same Bretton Woods institution and you will be given the same facility but at 10% loan, Madam Speaker. That means when Kenya is repaying this loan, when Zambia is repaying this loan, when Tanzania is repaying this loan, we are repaying it at 100 times the amount of money that USA will pay, France will pay, Canada will pay. The global north has rigged the financial system against the global south. And Madam Speaker, I was very proud to see President Ruto taking up this issue at the African Union in the recently concluded meetings. Madam Speaker, we need to ask these questions, not only in this parliament, not only at the continental level, even at the international level. Something is wrong. We are being told we are backward, we are behind. Kenya is being told you have loans and you are not doing well. But then I go to the same institution, you give the USA at 0.01%. And then I go to the same institution as Kenya, you give me at 10%. Meaning, if I'm taking $100 million facility, I will pay 100 times more than what the US will pay. How fair is this situation to the countries in Africa? How fair is this situation to Kenya? So, Madam Speaker, as we celebrate the giving of these facilities to us, we must start questioning what we can do to raise our own
sources of revenues. We must start talking as Africa where we can get money. Let us involve more the African Development Bank. Let us involve the infrastructure and the multilaterals that are based in Africa, rather than working with institutions like World Bank and other multilaterals that are rigged against us. Mr. Speaker, the problem with the Senate in Kenya, the problem with the Parliament, the National Assembly in Kenya, they have no idea what is happening. We have a problem, and we must consistently fight to restructure the global financial institutions that have been rigged against the global south. We must continue this battle, and I'm very proud, very, very proud to see our president, having understood the issues as they are, debating these things, raising these things at the African level, the AU functions. And we pray that this will continue. Madam Speaker, as I make my contribution here, I want to state again, it is time we look again at our debt level. This country needs to find a way in raising our own money so that we don't have to go to these Western institutions that have really impoverished us. They say they are helping us, but in actual fact, they are helping their brothers and their sisters in the Western world. They say they are here, they are giving us aid, and they want us to celebrate, but in actual fact, they are making money out of us. Because when you charge me 100 times more than when you charge another country in the West, you are actually riding on our back. And we need to discuss even the loans that have been paid by this country and the loans that we are servicing. Madam Speaker, as we thank these people who have helped us so far, we need to ask ourselves questions. What can we do as Africa? What can we do as a country? So, Madam Speaker, I want to urge this Senate, as we pass this report, to think again. There are initiatives that this administration and the President Ruto has started. When we talk about the national lottery, when we talk about the hustler move, when we talk about creating a culture of saving for this country, let us support these initiatives, because these people are also giving us money from what they saved from their own finances. Let us raise that culture of saving so that we can borrow from within our resources, so that our country does not go to more debt, so that our country is not exposed to discrimination by the World Bank and other Bretton Woods institutions. Madam Speaker, this is the way that we are going to help this country grow, and this country will not grow from these loans. And it is another thing that my learned friend, my colleague, the Honorable Kalale, has talked about. This money is expensive that we are taking. We are praying that the governors who will receive this money from all the 47 counties, now this is the 17.159 billion. This money will be used well. We want the governors to know that we are borrowing this money. These monies are being borrowed from World Bank. They are being borrowed at 100 times more than what Britain is paying, because these are their institutions. These are institutions that are making them richer and richer. So let us not misuse these monies. Please, the governor of Tana River and the other governors, let us not misuse this money. Have a heart for the people of your county. Use this money for the benefit of the people. This is not free money. This is not government allocations. This is not direct money. This is money we are borrowing, and we are borrowing it 100 times more than what the UK and Britain, what the UK and the US and France and Germany, at the rate they access this money from these Bretton Woods institutions. So use this money fairly for the benefit of the people. And we as senators, don't feel bad when we come for you, because when we are coming for you, we are aware that this money is expensive. And when you misuse this money, we shall come for you at that county level. And it is not politics, because some people think when we are doing our oversight, When Honorable Kalwale is saying that there's been so many billions pumped into Kakamega and the money is not being seen on the ground, when I stand to say the same thing for Tana River County, people start thinking that you want those kind of seats. No. As senators, we know these monies are difficult to access. We know these monies are expensive. And when it comes to the people, we want these monies to be used for the purpose for which we borrowed it and we approved it, for them to come to you. I hope governors somewhere are listening. I hope CECs somewhere are listening, that if this money is misused and it comes back to us through the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, we shall not be very kind to those people who will be found to have misused these monies. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to again support and congratulate the chairman for the work they have done in this committee. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mungatana. I now call upon Senator Tobiko Percy-Peris to contribute to this motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, let me congratulate the mover of the motion, Senator Ali Roba, party leader, because of the good job that the committee has done. Madam Speaker, and also congratulate the President for passing, signing this into law. Madam Speaker, at the moment, our counties are at crossroads. Majority of our counties, particularly those in the ASAL areas, Madam Speaker, are going through unprecedented drought and famine, Madam Speaker, a situation whereby right now what we are facing is starvation of the population. Madam Speaker, because of this, I am glad that Kajiado County is one of the beneficiaries of the additional revenue, Madam Speaker, conditional revenue, Madam Speaker. And we, just like the earlier speakers have said, our counties cannot afford, we don't have the luxury for this money to be spent on other things, and unless it is the necessities of that county, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we know our counties in the, are battling, our people are battling with cancer in the hospitals. Our people are battling with, kidney failures. The health sector, Madam Speaker, has become extremely expensive. And the more the facilities we have in our hospitals will be the better for the people, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we have a situation like what we are facing in the country right now, it calls for austerity measures. It calls for prudent spending, Madam Speaker. It calls for projects to be prioritized, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, because of that, we expect all governors to really be careful in the expenditure of this money, to remember that we will pay very expensively for these loans, and to know that the people are very, very needy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in our counties at the moment, you find that children are not even going to school. And they're not going to school because they are not energetic enough. There is no food at home and there is no food in schools, Madam Speaker. Over the weekend, I had parents coming to my home and saying, we are not sending our kids to school because if there was food in school, they would go. But we'd better stay with them at home. Not that there is food at home, but because there is no choice, Madam Speaker. And so for every project the governors will put into this money, there must be priority needs, Madam Speaker. Water is a crucial issue right now in our counties. In this time when even boreholes are going dry, Madam Speaker, drought mitigation measures, including relief food,
both in schools and to the communities. Madam Speaker, these are the things we expect the governors to address as a matter of priority, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I arise to support and also to urge governors to be careful in the spending of this money and for the national government to be prompt in disbursement of the same funds, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have gone, as the Devolution Committee, we've gone to a number of counties. And we realize sometimes we blame the governors, we blame the county executives, but the problem lies with the disbursement from Treasury, that they are not receiving these monies on time. And so governors are put in very awkward situations, Madam Speaker. And so we will also call upon Treasury to have prompt release of these funds to the counties so that it can benefit the people. Madam Speaker, this also brings me to another issue of, the tug of wars going on between the county assemblies and the governors. And it is not so much on delivery of services. You find counties and governors are still, they're still stuck in the general elections, whereby by now Kenya should move on. Kenya should move on because elections were done and finished. Just like in the national level, we do not understand what our good colleagues in the minority side are still, fighting about, being restless about. The Azimio rallies that are going on that we do not understand when the country is in dire need. When the country is facing a situation, even those they are calling upon to come for these rallies can barely come because people cannot even get enough food, leave alone money for transport around, to follow the party leaders to Machakos and every other place, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I would urge the governors to concentrate on the work that they were given. They were elected. Let them concentrate on the work that they were given. Let them work with the national government that is duly elected. Let them work with the President of the Republic of Kenya. Let us move as a country and let us prioritize the needs of our people who at the moment are facing very difficult situations, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will urge our counties to make sure that schools are given priority, the ECD programs. Madam Speaker, you have seen the most unfortunate situation of the ECDE teachers who, the salary commission the other day have said that they be paid around 8,000, 10,000, maximum 15,000. Which, Madam Speaker, is really on the lower side. Not that I'm encouraging this money to be used for recurrent expenditure, but, Madam Speaker, the governors should also take care of their staff so that we do not have a situation whereby people, the ECD teachers cannot even deliver, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my encouragement to the governors is that they should concentrate on development. They should concentrate on the situations right now that are facing most of our counties. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support.
Thank you, Senator. Now I call upon Senator Esther Anyen Okenyu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also want to support this report by the able chair, Captain Robert. Mine would, I've actually had a look at my county. We are beneficiaries of the same, but I want to give a general call for action from the county chiefs in the 47 counties that we should really embark on an own source revenue action whereby we are generating our own revenue, and as much as we are benefiting from these conditional grants and disbursements from the national government, we need to avoid wastage in form of corruption and stiffer penalties on people who are found culpable, because currently we have desperate people out there who are in dire need of these services. Devolution came to ensure that services get closer to the people. But what we are seeing now, services are getting closer to the people, but they are not being able to benefit because of wastage of these resources. We have county chiefs who are also over-promising on what their counties can generate. As a result, we are having so many pending bills and thereby not being able to pay suppliers who are ordinary Kenyans in this manner and looking to get their payments so that they can support their families. So mine, Madam Speaker, is to support the report, yes, but urge county chiefs in the 47 counties to minimize on wastage and stiffer penalties applied on people who will be found culpable of these activities that are contributing to losses, knowing very well this money is borrowed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Esther. Now we'll have Senator David Wakoli Wafula.
Asante Speaker kwa fursa hii ambayo mmenipa kuchangia hususan mada ya kuangazia pesa zinazokwenda mashinani. Tunapopiga kurunzi mashinani, kuna kaunti ambazo kwa sasa zimeshindwa kuwapa wakulima pembejeo na mbegu za ukulima kwa sababu fedha hazipo. Na hizi pesa zitakapoachiliwa, natumai kwamba wakulima watapewa nafasi bora, wanawake, mayatima, ili waweze kujipanga katika msimu huu wa upanzi. Vile vile serikali imetoa mfumo mpya wa kutoa kidato cha 7 cha 8 hadi shule za upili, na hivi kwamba inahitajika miundombinu ambayo kwayo watoto wataweza kupata madarasa, kupata madawati na vitabu. Vyote hivi vinahitaji pesa ili yote yawezekane. Katika sekta ya kilimo, tunajua kwamba kuna sekta mbalimbali ama viwango mbalimbali ambavyo serikali imeweka pesa. Lakini lazima tujue kwamba pale ndani kuna kupe katika serikali hizi ambazo kwazo hujificha katika miradi hii na kupunja pesa za wakulima. Ningependa kuwaraiba waziri wa kilimo na serikali za kaunti kwamba sisi kama Senate tutamulika hawa watu, tutawapuliza dum kuhakikisha kwamba pesa za kaunti zinafanya kazi kwa mujibu wa sheria. Nikimalizia, pesa hizi zitakapofika ni kuhakikisha kwamba vile vile kuna mustakabali mwema kati yetu na magavana na serikali za kitaifa, serikali ya kitaifa. Sasa sitarajii kwamba watakapopata pesa wakose kulipa pesa ambazo zinaenda kwa halmashauri ya afya, halmashauri ya kijamii NSSF, na vile vile kulipa ushuru, kwa sababu tumeona katika vitabu vya hesabu kwamba wafanyikazi wa serikali wanalipwa mishahara, lakini pesa zinakazoenda katika kulipa ushuru katika serikali ama kugharamia matibabu katika sekta ya afya hazitumwi katika NHIF. Sasa tunataka pesa hizi zitakapokuja, hao wafanyikazi vile vile wapewe haki yao kwa kulipa ushuru, NHIF na NSSF, haya madeni yaondolewe. Nikimalizia, kuna wachapakazi wa kandarasi ambao kwa muda mrefu pesa zao hazijalipwa. Haiwezekani tu tunawapa pesa kila uchao lakini hawalipi madeni ya wafanyikazi wanakandarasi. Sasa tutakapotoka hapa vile vile tutataka kuhakikisha kwamba mfumo wa bottom up, wale wachapakazi wa mashinani walipe pesa zao, wale ambao katika ratiba ya mwaka 2023-24 wapewe pesa zao, ili kwa pamoja tusonge mbele na tuimarishe nchi yetu ya Kenya. Asante sana.
Thank you, Senator. We will now have Senator Samson Cheralike contributing to this motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I want to thank the committee for the good job that they have done, that is in line with the provisions of Chapter 12, where this motion has originated from, Madam Speaker. And also to thank the new senator from Bungoma. I didn't know the people from Bungoma speak fluent and good Kiswahili. So maybe, Madam Speaker, in future, you should be challenged to also be doing proceedings through Kiswahili, because we have translated our standing orders in Kiswahili, and I know our secretariat have been very efficient in terms of ensuring. Madam Speaker, 2 points. Opening remarks is that this issue of disbursement, you know, Madam Speaker, I sit in Public Accounts Committee, and the biggest elephant in the room when you look at the Audit General and audit queries, financial statements of the counties, financial reporting, is because there is delayed disbursement from the National Treasury. I remember, Madam Speaker, at some point we wanted to sanction the former CS of Treasury, because most of the time, and I think the current Treasury should be watching this, and most of the time they like violating Article 219. That says a county share of revenue shall be raised by the national government, shall be transferred to the county without undue delay and without deduction, except when the transfer has been stopped under Article 2225. And there is a process on how you can stop those allocation of funds, Madam Speaker. So most of the counties, you know, it's hard for us to do our oversight job. You call a governor, Madam Speaker. You ask, for example, Muranga Governor, our good brother, Senator Irungu Kangata, who was a whip and my good friend. You ask, what did you do in Maragua, or in Kiharu, or in Mugoiri? What did you do this road from this point to another? Madam Speaker, it is sad when you ask them about budget performance and control, they are not able to observe maybe 2 billion, 1 billion in development, especially in development budget. It is because of violation of Article 219, where the National Treasury is not keen on following the provision of the Constitution, Madam Speaker. And therefore, even as we pass this, the National Treasury and the government agencies must work to ensure that the money is disbursed as appropriated, Madam Speaker. And even, I think county assemblies also should work very hard, because even the law provides that they should pass those budget estimates and others within the county assemblies, especially Article 224 on county appropriation bills. They should pass and ensure. I know, Madam Speaker, most county assemblies now, when they are passing county budgets, they don't have a problem, because most of them, Madam Speaker, before, especially in the third Senate and the first and second Senate, there was a big challenge. Not the first, I can see we are they were not the 60s, but from 2013, is that most of the budgets were being returned by controller budget, were being rejected. But I'm happy with the capacity of building county assemblies. At least the processing of budgets for county executive and county assemblies, Madam Speaker, is becoming much more easier. The third point, Madam Speaker, I wanted to move is that, I'm not moving the bill, to state, is that we need to relook about financial autonomy of county assemblies. That's a soft underbelly in terms of our primary oversight, Madam Speaker. We need to give the financial autonomy as per the PMF Act. Madam Speaker, can you believe the governor of Murang'a, or governor of Nairobi, or governor of Nandi, the CCM in charge of finance as per the PMF Act, gets the money through CRF and their bank account here in the National Treasury? It is processed to the county government. Then the clerk of the county assembly makes a requisition for that money to be taken to the county assemblies. Then how do you expect MCS to oversight when the governor is holding? And that's why I asked my brother, Senator Bono Halwale, to say, you know, accountability in Kakamega. What was it? Those MCS could not oversight. If they oversight, the governor will not give them the money. They'll go without salary, without car loans and mortgage, go without allowances. They will go, and you know, the MCAs are the first line of defense for wananchi who have small arambe's, baby showers, funeral committees, among other, Madam Speaker, even preparation of weddings in the villages. I don't know whether they also participate in preparation of bullfighting matches. But, Madam Speaker, the point I'm trying to make is that the CCM makes a requisition. And therefore, as a Senate, we must be ready to give financial autonomy to our county assemblies. So that, you know, and governors are mischievous. They can ask 190 MCAs wanted me to give them salary and allowance, and there is no medicine. Do you want me to buy medicine or to give MCAs money? 190 will become, say, buy medicine. What happens if a governor is summoned to appear or invited to appear before county assembly? They will use their power to withdraw and ensure accessibility, Madam Speaker. So I think there was a policy before, but we need to amend the PMF Act, and I appeal to the House, Madam Speaker, let us give financial autonomy to MCAs to be able to perform their duty. Madam Speaker, I've seen Nandi County, through the total conditional grants from the national government, which is provided for under Chapter 12 on Principles of Finance, is getting a total of, Nandi is getting a total of 153, 297, 872, and of course there is conditional leasing of medical equipment. But Speaker, you know this medical equipment, I once investigated with the Chair of Health, former Senator of Trans Nzoia, and we found this was an automatic rip-off. This medical leasing story about counties. Can you believe, Madam Speaker, and then counties were leasing syringes. Can you lease a syringe? They were leasing gloves. They were leasing bed sheets. Madam Speaker, this was an outright rip-off, and I expected the chair of, and you know he knows because he's a former governor and a current senator. I know now he's comfortable if I have told him former governor. I remember last time when I tried saying they are former governors, I was given a thorough engagement in the House. He's the former governor, Governor Senator Roba. This knows that was outright rip-off, so I expected him to demand and not to fear. Because I'm a Christian, I don't know whether it is in Quran also. They say, fear not. They should tell of, during budget, that we no longer want something called medical equipment supplies. Let the counties be given money for need assessment basis. If they want to buy kidney transplant machine, they can buy. If they want to buy any other machine, but not to lease syringes and gloves. And Madam Speaker, those contracts was queued and affected even our oversight and transparency and accountability, Madam Speaker. So on the issue of medical, and I can see Nandi is getting 153, and I think, Madam Speaker, number 4, or the 5th, is the issue of accountability is not negotiable. Governors should be told as much. When governors are demanding additional money, I have seen them making a lot of noise, shouting at us. I saw the Deputy President saying there is no additional we can not add. If you think you want to whip us, so whip us because the economy is not doing very well, Madam Speaker. I agree. But governors, I want governors to use the same energy to account for money the way they are demanding for more. Madam Speaker, I have sat and it is paining because the work of oversight, Madam Speaker, is I'm a mortician. We are doing a postmortem on a bed, so our work is just being a mortician. We are looking after the fact. Because we come and look at the audit queries of Kakamega and ask what the Bugungu Stadium consumed. Who was the contractor? What was the scope of works, Madam Speaker? We are just morticians. We are operating on somebody that is already dead, Madam Speaker. And therefore, Madam Speaker, governors, there is no option. And Madam Speaker, in issue of accountability, the biggest soft underbelly, and I don't fear to say this, is EACC. Ethics and anti-corruption are now part and partners of allegations of corruption within governors. Because when whistleblowers, Madam Speaker, and this is a serious whistleblower, leave the others that were seeing and as mere rallies, and you can see minority side, they have also run away because they are using fake whistleblower. Serious whistleblower that is under Witness Protection Fund. When they report these issues to EACC, Madam Speaker, the EACC officers are wrong. They go and see the governor and show him the evidence, and then they also eat. That's why when you go to Mashinani and ask 190, this thing has been reported to EACC, but no action has been taken. And when the EACC arrests, they arrest clerks. They go for Omena instead of Mbuta or the big fish, Madam Speaker. And that is where the challenge of accountability lies. Because even as a committee, Madam Speaker, I know you will ask us, we table very nice reports. very good ones here before the floor. The Secretariat, your office of the Speaker has done a good job, facilitated our work. We table with serious recommendation, Madam Speaker. But when you table, there is no implementation mechanism. Instead of DCI, ESCC, control of budget, or auditor general, even under Article 224, where, Madam Speaker, it is being demanded that a county that has violated the law, they should not receive any allocation, Madam Speaker. But they go ahead and become part, Madam Speaker, of this. And therefore, Madam Speaker, even for us who are believers, Madam Speaker, in the Holy Book, we must account, Madam Speaker. I know time is spent, but this is a serious matter. This is very important for this House. And I think I have 15 minutes or so. How many minutes to go? 10 minutes. Madam Speaker, we need to be honest, and I like and I'm happy the person who did this report is a former governor. So he was doing with an insight of understanding. When you look at another point, number 7, county supplement for construction of county headquarters, I want to thank, before looking at this 163 million, and I think, for example, Nande, we are still ongoing with construction of county headquarters. Nyamira, Madam Speaker, we are still going construction of county headquarters. I think Tana River, a number of counties.
Senator Chadaligi, I don't want to interfere, but it's 6:23, yes. So we have few minutes. Bear that in mind as you continue submitting.
Oh, okay. No, Madam Speaker, I would have wished this conversation, even the people who boycotted the House should be here, because that's the reason why they are here. Because it's one, of course, yes, I understand, but so that we dispense of. So I want to thank for finally, Madam Speaker, the accountability question, the governors, they are not going to hide anywhere. No. Governor Oparanya tried to go in 2013 to court to block governors appearing. But the courts rule in our favor. I want to ask senators, the Supreme Court advisory and our role under Article 96 is very crystal clear, Madam Speaker. And therefore, even for Nandi, for example, Madam Speaker, there is nothing going on. County headquarters are stalled. Kabiet Creameries, dairies, and I've seen Narib, Madam Speaker, it has consumed a lot of money. There is no value for in Kabiet. Kiborgok, for example, Madam Speaker, we have 256 acres, and that is own source revenue. Counties are not being creative in terms of own source revenue. For example, in Nandi, we have an estate called Kiborgok Tea Estate. That is 256, Madam Speaker. And it has only, it generates 13 million. 13 million, Madam Speaker, and I know you come from tea growing area. How can you tell me 256 acres generates only 13 million per year, Madam Speaker? And those are corruption that we must fight and ensure that every penny that is taken, Madam Speaker, to the county must be accounted for, and those projects. In fact, in Nandi, for example, Madam Speaker, 300 and something projects have stalled, and yet money has been consumed up to 300 million Kenya shillings, Madam Speaker. So governors, the way they are excited getting this allocation, they must also be excited and smiling when they come for accounting before the Senate of the Republic of. In the interest of time, Madam Speaker, so that we can dispense and send money in good time, Madam Speaker, I beg to support and thank the committee for the job well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Chiralege. I will now call upon, there are no more requests for contribution. I'll call the mover of the motion to respond, to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to take this opportunity to first and foremost extend my gratitude to the senators for the contribution they have given to this motion. It is very important to understand that this money is not small amount. It is including the 163 million for construction of county headquarters. So you're looking at 17.319 billion shillings being released to the county governments within the next 3-4 months. Even in as far as the impact it will have in terms of circular flow of income in the country, because the 47 counties stand to benefit from this money, it is extremely critical and extremely important role and function of the Senate
for us to be able to, prosecute a matter that is so critical in terms of releasing additional money to county governments for purpose of making sure the county governments are able to do this function. I know we've had a bit of controversial issue that may have led to a number of our senators walking out. But to be very frank, Madam Speaker, this is a very, very critical, function of a senator to understand that releasing additional funds to their counties needed, something that they needed to look at the order paper and say, this one we must execute because time is running out, and be able to think beyond the issue of maybe political party and such other issues. It's very painful because as a senator who has served as a governor for 2 terms, getting this money released very fast should be the interest of every senator in making sure the funds get to these counties. And this money is a lot as it is. I want to appreciate the senators that have really taken the time to respond and give their input, and we've taken note. And I in the interest of time, beg to reply and request in line with the standing order number 66(3). Madam Speaker, I would like to request you to defer the putting of the question to a later date. And with that, I beg to reply. Thank you very much.
No, but this concerns counties, so it must go to division. Very good, Chairman. Now, after this, you are loyal troops. Now that you are that, your loyal troops are still in the house. You will need delegation. Yeah, it concerns counties. Yeah, and you need delegations. Yeah. So to adjourn member, to defer to education. How many divisions can we do tomorrow?
Honorable Senators, I want to thank you most sincerely. First, beginning with the mover of this motion. Very important motion has been moved in Senate today on matters that are affecting the county, especially the budgets and the budget allocations. And Honorable Senators, it is now close to 6:30, and this motion is very important, and I will request that the same be listed in the order paper tomorrow. I would request that this matter be listed in the order paper for division to be called tomorrow, during tomorrow's session. And I believe now it is almost 6:30 and we will rise. Apologies for that. Honorable Senators, it's now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the House. The Senate now therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 22nd February 2023 at 2:30 p.m. Thank you.